the beautiful solitude of the desert Southwest over in the USA. Eric has an incredible, diverse portfolio, everything from the grand through to the intimate, but these days much more focusing on the intimate side of the landscape. And his voice really speaks through his images, and his connection to the land really, shines through in the way he portrays it. So we're really keen to have a chat with Eric, get a little sneak preview into a couple of images that have been released already from the book, but the rest will be book only for a little while. So we'll be trying to get ourselves a copy if we can, so we can get good insight into some of those amazing images. I'm very keen to get myself a copy when I can, and looking forward to the conversation. Also joined with Luke and Paul tonight, as usual. How are you going tonight, guys?
Pretty good, mate. Pretty good. Getting excited for a workshop that we've got coming up tomorrow. I'm running with Paul, and a bit of Aurora action lately as well, which has been a lot of fun. So beautiful time of year in Tassie, and the weather we've been having down here lately has been incredible. So all systems, everything's happening at the moment.
Yeah, fantastic. Very good. I've been missing my Tassie doses. It's only a couple of months now till I'm down there with Paul and for a couple of weeks. But
hopefully we can have an adventure as well. That'd be pretty fun. Yeah,
mate. The list of places to explore and shoot in Tassie only grows longer despite visiting more as the years go by.
The more you know, the more that you know that you don't know. That's the problem. So it's very hard to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
have you been?
Funny enough, I had somebody write me yesterday, ask me about all the secret spots in Utah and the Four Corners, and I was like, "Oh, dude, how long's a piece of string?" It's like, oh my god, don't ask me a question like that. Go ask an American. Look out, Eric! You might have a knock on the door, mate.
Thanks for not spilling the beans.
I'm glad I've got my my screensaver on, because the back of this, there isn't a piece of carpet free at the moment. Just packing for this 10-day workshop that Luke and I have spent about half a year sort of planning and putting together for quite a large group, actually. We've got 11. So we've got a handful of pretty high-end photographers, so the expectations are going to be pretty high. So we're stepping it up as high as we can and getting to at least 4 different locations, actually, quite major locations, and multiple boat trips. And so there's quite a lot of logistics on this one, but it's going to be fun. And if we get anything like the last couple of nights with Cook and Auroras all night long, then we're going to have some happy clients. So
we've planned it around the Aurora and the new moon period and all of that, and around the equinox and around the solar maximum as well. So got a pretty reasonable chance of seeing one. We had a good show over the last couple of nights, so hopefully that continues. It was a big flare just the other night. I think last night there was a big flare, so. Yeah, fingers crossed. But either way, I think we'll have a barrel of a time. So that's always
Where's this
good.
one sort of focused around?
We've got 3 bases. We're going to start at Freycinet, which is a really good Aurora location, and then going to Mount Field for a few nights, a couple of nights, and then and also having a stop off in Hobart before we go over to Bruny Island as well. So it's pretty action packed, actually, and some really good locations.
And also Maria Island as well.
Oh yeah, of course. Yes, how could I forget? So it's quite a busy itinerary, but there's some good times for downtime there too. So it's a good balance. And certainly, if you're out all night shooting auroras, you want to make sure you're having enough sleep and all of that. So that's really really cool to be able to get back out on the road and help some people out getting some great shots.
Have you been getting much sleep, Luke, over the last few nights with the aurora?
It hasn't been too bad. Like the one that we had on Sunday night was it Saturday night rather? It had a really nice intense period, and then the moon rose, and just as it was dying down, and I think it went all night, or there's a bit more going on. But once the moon's up there and it's really strong, it just washes it out so much that if you go through the feed of some of the aurora groups and see all the shots, they were all from that initial period before the moon came up. And so, got a couple that I was pretty happy with, although it didn't invest a huge amount of time into getting to a location. I just went to a local location, and I'm very fortunate to be able to just go down the road and have a really great beach for it. So, it's all heating up. So it's pretty exciting. We haven't had much action for a while, so it's all good.
Yeah, it's been a little bit quiet actually relative to earlier late last year. But it should be hotting up again, hopefully, with the solar maximum creeping up on us. Have you guys ever photographed a full moon rainbow? Because I was driving back from the other night.
Was it Facebook or Instagram stories wherever you shared that? That was
it's true story. I literally just my whole rear view mirror started lighting up with this big angled thing in the sky, and I'm like, "What the heck is that?" And it was like 10 o'clock at night. And I pulled over, and I just went, "You've got to be joking! It's just a full balls out, full color rainbow at 10 o'clock at night."
I've shown it before.
Right opposite the super moon, the super blue moon. And I'm like, I've seen fog bows, I've seen like just white bows of light at night, I've seen circles around the actual moon, but not like it was straight opposite the moon. So it was a full like reflected like rainbow. And it was just like
I reckon it'd be super rare to be able to see that just like out and about. But I shot it at Skuggafoss in Iceland, and I planned when the full moon was actually going to be rising directly in alignment with the, I guess effectively opposite the waterfall.
Wow.
And I got the moon bow, I think they're called moon bows when they're at night, and I got that right over the basically the base of the waterfall, and then I was standing under it in the shot. So definitely a cool thing to try for, but it's super hard, I'd say, to try and make it, plan for that when it's not under a waterfall or a consistent light source or water source like that.
I think it just fluked it with like a passing shower and just the timing, because it was a full horizon to horizon, like just absolutely unbroken, just solid as rainbow. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it'd also have to be, the moon would have to be at the right height, and you'd have to be looking the right direction, and it's a pretty rare thing. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to currently get fit for New Zealand because there's some big hikes I'm doing down there, and that's come up way too quickly.
Have you booked some of the longer ones, Ben, or are they just some just like little hipster huts and things?
Yeah, we booked one that's like in the northern sort of Alps of the south.
Oh, okay, around Nelson.
Or quite in that sort of upper corner.
Okay, yeah.
Not a very popular one. And about 25 Ks and 1,500 meters elevation gain in and out.
I have to talk to what was your friend's name, Paul? That was on the from Graham. Yeah.
So I'm heading in there with
sounds like leaving up that area.
Yeah, so I'm heading in there with Michael McGee, who's a Wellington local, and Eric knows.
Oh, cool.
Well, actually, I think you gave you some pointers, or you hung out when you were down there a couple of years ago. Really cool, chill, just classic Kiwi guy. And he's got a fantastic eye as well. Like some of his intimates and small scenes are really, really cool. He just has he doesn't follow any sort of crowd. He very much creates his own work, and he's fantastic. I'm very keen to shoot with him for a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like an amazing trip.
Great.
When's that coming up, Ben?
I fly out on Friday, the 13th of October, which is fun. So hopefully the plane doesn't go down.
That's also a good time.
I've been watching Lost with my girlfriend actually, and hopefully there's no plane splitting in half Lost scenes going on. But
it's a really good dark sky period then too. Might be good for auroras as well. You have to keep an eye out.
And I'm really hoping to get some of that aurora action that you guys have been getting.
Yes.
So it'd be a fantastic,
pretty good chance, I'd say. Yeah. I'm starting a workshop the same day, so
yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we might get into our chat with Eric. So, Eric, welcome. Great to have you here. Now, it has been a little while since we last had you on. So, for those who maybe aren't familiar with you, hadn't seen that episode, etc., just give us a little introduction to yourself and what you're all about.
Well, I'm Eric Bennett. First and foremost, I'm a husband and a father. I live in Utah with my wife, Giselle, and our 4 children. We have a newborn right now, so it's actually nice to be on the show right now and have a break from having to deal with the kids for a couple hours. So glad you guys had me back on. And I've been doing photography full time for the last, this is my 10th year, actually.
Yeah, wow.
So pretty cool to come out with a new book in my 10th year of photography. Kind of a big deal, a decade of dedicating my life to this. That's about it. I mean, I got into nature photography because I just love nature, and the more my relationship deepened with the nature I was experiencing and all the places that I was traveling to, the more I cared about teaching people the value that it has, because I feel like if the everyday, the average person had that appreciation, we wouldn't be in the state that we're in with all the, global warming and all these things going on and pollution, and we would be treating the planet a lot better. So I haven't found anything more worthy of my time and more important than trying to teach people the value of pristine wilderness. And so that's really my motivation with my photography. I do enjoy art. I've always been into drawing and things like that. And I used to be a videographer until I quit and then pursued photography full time. So I really enjoy creating things, and I like sharing my own unique perspective of the places that are special to me and conveying the relationship that I have with them. But really my intention with sharing my work is that other people can also build their own relationship and care about these places, and in a way, like, put a face to a name. So when they hear about a place that's going to be mined or fracked or deforested, they know what they're talking about because maybe they've seen it in my images. Or, I mean, that's why I love that there are so many photographers now, because we can all share so many amazing places in this planet. So that's it in a nutshell. I don't know. I hate introductions, so that's about the best I can do, probably.
I thought, yeah, Benny put you straight on the spot there, bro.
No, it was good as they come. Yeah. So, new book. Give us, what's the deal? How did that sort of come about? Has this been a very long-term sort of project, or do you just kind of see it naturally accumulating? Why space, stillness, and solitude in the desert?
So I finished my first book in 2019. I finished putting it together and everything, and then got together with a publisher to begin printing and all that. And I think I touched on that whole experience in the last episode. If not, I've talked about it in lots of other interviews. So I think it's kind of a tired story by now. So I won't really get into that. But basically, that book didn't come out until July of 2021 because I had horrible issues with the first publisher that I was working with. They weren't able to meet the standards that I had for the book, because for me, the most important thing was to create something that I was proud of and that portrayed nature in the best way possible. I didn't want to sacrifice on the quality to save money or anything like that. So when it didn't meet my standards, I didn't feel comfortable taking people's money for it and sending it out that way. So I ended up having to fire them and hire a new publisher, which is the publisher that I'm working with on this book now, because they did such a great job and I was so pleased. And so I started working on a second book right after I finished that one. So like at the beginning of 2020, and started planning out all these trips and things that I was going to take to different places to make the photographs, or the kinds of photographs of the environments and things that I had in mind for the theme of that book. I went on one trip to New Zealand, which was awesome. Shot a bunch of stuff, felt really good. Came back, the world went into lockdown, and I basically couldn't pursue that idea that I had anymore. Yeah. So that book is on hold. I'm actually starting to work on that one now that I finished this one. Yeah. And this was the book that began to take shape as I was just exploring the places that I consider to be my backyard, that are just about 2 to 5 hours from my house in southern Utah in the desert. And that's a place that I've really grown attached to over the years. At first, I wasn't able to appreciate its beauty and kind of its hidden, it's a stark landscape. I didn't really know what to do with the simplicity at the time when I was a beginner photographer. And so it was like a slow growing relationship that I had, whereas like the mountains or the coast or the forest, those were all like love at first sight. I was just captivated immediately. But the desert was something that was, it developed over time, and maybe it wasn't as exciting at first. But now that's kind of the landscape that I've grown the most fond of, I would say. Maybe because of my proximity living here in Utah. It's just the place that I visit the most often because it is so easy to travel there. But also I think I just really connect with this kind of landscape. And so I was naturally taking photos of this place. And I was like, well, maybe my next book can just be about this. And because we were in lockdown, we were confined to our houses for months and months. And even a lot of the places here in Utah were closed. So I really couldn't get out and be in nature as often as I needed to. And it really started to make me appreciate wide open places where you feel free and you can walk around and you can roam instead of being stuck inside of a house with four walls. And also the sense of calm that you get, the sense of peace that you get in these places that you just can't find anywhere else. And also the silence. Like, we just bought our house in 2020 and there's a busy road nearby, so like we can hear cars and stuff when we're outside and things like that. And so I just became like more and more aware of these things, and I just couldn't wait to get outside again. And that's the theme that I decided to focus on. So the book is called Space, Stillness, Silence, and I wanted to incorporate a lot of writing. That's why I like making photography books, because it's a chance to not only share photographs in a way that is very conducive to spending more time with them, looking more closely. You get to choose the order that people look at them. You can also add writing to it, and you can express a bit more about the message that you're trying to share through the photos, and you can complement photography with writing, because each medium has its strengths and limitations. And so the book is about conservation and preserving wild places, mainly the desert, because I feel like the desert, you can find space, stillness, and silence in all kinds of landscapes. I think all of us as photographers have realized that. But the desert really is like the quintessential place. It really is the quietest place I've ever been to in the world. You don't even hear flowing water. In a lot of areas around here, you don't even hear passing planes. That's something that not a lot of people think about, but I'll talk about that more later. You can be away from the highway really easy. You don't run into other people a lot of times. So it's really like the quintessential place for space, stillness, silence. And so what the book is about, in essence, is preserving these places, not just in a material sense, like their resources or the aesthetic beauty of the landscapes, but also preserving the space, stillness, and silence within them, which is actually so fragile. And the importance of that is because in those kinds of places, that's where we as human beings can cultivate inner space, inner stillness, and inner silence, which I think are so important. I've gotten more into meditation in the last few years. With social media, it's become so hard for so many of us to concentrate and focus. And that's a topic that I've been reading about extensively in the last couple of years. So really, the book is about why we need these places, and it's about like the current state of humanity and what will happen to us if we no longer have these kinds of places where we can go and we can restore the space, stillness, and silence within ourselves. What kind of people will we become? Because in reality, long before the last species goes extinct, long before the last tree is cut down, long before the last glacier dries up, I think even within this century, we could entirely lose space, open wide spaces as we overpopulate the planet. We could completely lose stillness as, there's just traffic everywhere. There's highways cutting through all these environments. And we no longer have the ability to concentrate because, the nature of social media and just the way life is now. And then also silence. I think that's the one that's going to go first, because even if you're in a pristine place, if there's airplanes passing overhead or if there's like huge crowds, things like that, it's really scary to think that those things could disappear entirely. So that's what the book is about in a nutshell. I just thought it was a really interesting topic because those three words, space, stillness, silence, they all imply the absence of things. They're not physical things, they're non-things, and yet they're very real, tangible. They can be felt, seen, they can be sensed. But I think we're so focused on physical things as a species, we're ignoring all of these non-things that are even more important than anything that we can create or build. And it's just crazy to think that they could disappear entirely one day. So I probably could have prepared like a better soundbite or something, but that's just off the top of my head, how I feel about all this and my motivation for it.
Yeah. And yeah, that's just like, that's super inspiring to hear. And it's so true. Like it's the chaos of just everything in the everyday life. And I remember you recommending a book, Stolen Focus. You mentioned you were doing some extensive reading on sort of human concentration and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I gave that a read as well. And it's really insightful as to how just just the instant reward mechanisms of everyday life in the modern world is just destroying our ability to appreciate, slowing down and, not having gratification every 2 seconds, which is what these wide open spaces in the desert and nature in general just rewards. And so, yeah, it's something that's rapidly disappearing. And what's it like with airspaces? Like you mentioned, airplanes flying overhead. Is that something that's kind of been like a struggle to keep national parks and everything clear of planes? Are there places where there's dedicated clear airspace that's under threat or anything like that?
So, because of this book, in preparation for writing the essays that I wanted to include, I read extensively about, all these different things, like you said, Stolen Focus by Johann Hari, The Shallows by Nicholas Carr, all these books about concentration and focus and meditation. Yep. Also, Quiet by Suzanne Cain, which talks about the importance of silence. Yep. The Nature Fix by Florence, can't remember her name. And then another book that really impacted me was One Square Inch of Silence by Gordon Hempton. And so while I was in the middle of this book, last year I was backpacking in the mountains. I was just by myself on a solo backpacking trip in a really, really remote corner of the mountains. It's a mountain range that I go to every year, and I hike around there and explore it extensively. I've already gone 3 times this season. I've hiked over almost 300K and for you Australians over there, because we use miles here. But
well done.
Anyways, so I was reading this book, and he talks about how so he lives in the Pacific Northwest, and in the Hoh rainforest, he was able to restore the silence in this one area with like a radius of like 60 miles. And the main disturbance of it was airplanes passing overhead, leaving the Seattle airport. And so he contacted American Airlines and Delta and all the main airlines that fly over there. And he worked out an agreement with them to reroute their planes to not pass over this area, so that it would be protected, and the natural soundscape would be undisturbed. So when I read that, I was like, wow, that is such an amazing thing. And it just made me so much more aware of what places sound like. It's something that you notice, but in this mountain range where I was, and I was reading the book, I started to notice airplanes were passing overhead like every 5 minutes. And I was like, okay, I'm in the most remote mountain range of the lower 48 in the United States, and yet even here you can't get like an interval of 15 minutes or more. And so I was like, that just seems ridiculous. Like, it just seems like a no-brainer that at least this place could be preserved and not be disturbed by the airplanes. And so I got back from that trip. I was super fired up. I emailed him, and luckily he's a super cool guy, and he responded to me. And so we started talking about what we could possibly do to also achieve the same thing in this mountain range. And so what ended up happening is this year he sent me like recording equipment, a sound meter, which is a pretty fun thing to play around with. And so I went to a remote lake where nobody else goes. I knew there wouldn't be any other people around. And what they had me do is I had to get up 2 hours before sunrise and start recording for this 3-hour period, 2 hours before sunrise, 1 hour after sunrise, because that is the most crucial time for wildlife. That's like when they're most active.
Yep.
I'm sure a lot of you guys hiking early in the morning, that's like when you see bears or you guys don't have bears over there, but deer,
Koala
and,
bears.
all these different.
Bears, right?
We have grizzly bears and stuff in this mountain range, so it's kind of scary. But
yeah, that's the one. But Australia's more dangerous. So let's just make that clear. Like, you know.
You got the spiders and snakes.
Yeah,
and
that's right. Yeah,
all the nasty
they'll
stuff.
come out and maul you. That's right. Yeah. Anyway, let's leave that one.
So yeah, I had to record on 3 different mornings, and then I submitted the recordings to them to analyze them. And basically what they were trying to determine is, during that 3-hour period, is there a single interval of 15 minutes? And what they actually had me do is they said, yeah, maybe in that one area of the range, there were airplanes passing overhead, and I was more in the north, which is closer to a international airport. So I went like further in the south to this place where I thought there would be fewer planes, because so the organization that he worked with, and I think he founded, is Quiet Parks International. And so what they can do is they do these studies. And so I was volunteering to do the study for them because it's a place that I know, and I was going to be in there anyways. They can designate places that qualify if there are at least like I think it's just at least one interval of 15 minutes of natural silence throughout the day. It can qualify as an official quiet park, and you can give it a designation, which then gives you more fighting power to ensure that it stays protected, because obviously they can add more flights and it can get busier. So if you can do this ahead of time before it becomes a huge problem that's too big to solve, because now it's like you have to reroute thousands of planes instead of just 100 or something. Yeah, it just helps ensure that the place that you preserve that natural soundscape, because not only is it important for us visiting as human visitors, it's even more important for the animals that live there, because airplanes can startle them. Airplanes can, if a predator is hunting for prey, it can scare off the prey, and then they can't catch it, or vice versa. You might not hear a predator approaching if an airplane passes overhead. Like, there's so many ways that it affects wildlife. It increases their stress, increases cortisol release, just like it does for us. So basically, like, noise is a really bad thing, and noise pollution is actually one of the most detrimental things that, again, not a lot of people really pay attention to, but it's affecting like virtually every single environment on the planet because of airplanes, at least, if it's not cars or lots of foot traffic and things like that. So yeah, anyways, like, just working on this book, it got me thinking about that, and that was a great conservation project to be a part of. And so it did qualify. So next year I'm going to be going back with a team to do a more intensive, detailed study, and that way we can have more data and more evidence to use, like, in our favor, if we are going to try to get planes to reroute or anything like that. It's just, it gives you something to present, because otherwise they'll think like, oh, you probably can't hear airplanes from 20,000 feet below, but you can. It's super loud. It's like just as loud as thunder. A lot of times they would read like 85 decibels on the sound meter. Whoa. And that's pretty loud. 65 decibels is like normal speech, which, like, if somebody's talking to you, like, that's pretty loud. But yeah, 85 decibels, 75 decibels, like that's all enough to startle anybody. I remember one night, like, it woke me up while I was sleeping when an airplane passed overhead. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's wild. Are there other places that you think you might start to work on in that same sort of vein?
Yeah, I told them I'm willing to volunteer for another thing if they need like another study done, because yeah, it's so important. So I'll see what happens. But yeah, Gordon Hempton is a really cool guy. I highly recommend reading that book. And
yeah, that sounds amazing.
Eric,
the thing that strikes me about that is too that, like, it's not just how loud it is, but it's also like how intrusive it is as well, because it's one thing to have the volume, but then also it's snapping you out of actually being in the wilderness, and then there's people around, and that's a whole nother element that's probably people in suits behind desks probably don't really fully appreciate, but how much that can actually pull you back out of where you actually are.
Yeah, or even here, like, the National Park Service puts so much effort into preserving the aesthetic beauty of the places. But like with infrastructure and things like that, like, they don't realize, it's becoming a busier place. Like, it's not as relaxing. And then also the noise issue, the noise only increases. And so it's like something that's so important, because I think what is the most impactful thing about being in the wild is what it feels like, as opposed to just what you're looking at, right? I think we can all agree on that. And that's why often we try to make photographs that are evocative, that don't just show what a place looks like, but that also transmit the feelings that we have towards the things that we photograph, because that is the most important thing. And the soundscape, like you're saying, Luke, is such an important aspect of that, because when it's disrupted or anything, it just totally jerks you out of that experience. It interrupts it. But again, like, that's just how it is for us human visitors. We got to think about the wildlife that live there, and it's so much more detrimental for them, and that's really the most important thing as well. So
I had a very distinctive experience more from the visual point of view, Eric. So I did actually, did a show on it just a few weeks ago. I went down to Grand Canyon for 23 days, which is one of the longest sort of more pure wilderness experiences I had. It was in midwinter and off season. So we actually timed it. So there's only one release of a group a day. So you can literally do the entire trip without seeing anyone, which we pretty much did, apart from Fat and Ranch. And I remember seeing this lattice work of lines through the sky on the first 3 or 4 days, as was its proximity to Vegas, and then it's literally like an entire 7 to 10 day period, but I didn't see a single one. And that was really where the deep immersion went in for the wilderness experience. But then I literally woke up one day and it was like we crossed a threshold. And I did some research afterwards and realized we were literally passing through zones where they had allocated that, it was a no-fly space, partly for the wilderness values. And it was really, really impactful, deeply impactful. In fact, I don't think I've almost got a photograph for the whole last week that had any sky and it didn't have an element of lattice work of the trails of all the planes going through. So down in the canyon with the sound of the river, the sound's less of an issue because it's got too much to compete with. But visually, it was hugely impactful. And on what I certainly was hoping and certainly experiencing one of the more immersive experiences that I've had. And I'm really with you there. Like, I mean, you're speaking as much from a sound point of view. This particular experience was a very visual point of view, but it was full on. Just having that large period of time, like an entire week with nothing, and then an entire week straight into it. Just that line that got crossed, and you just can't quite let it go. It just totally feels almost oppressive when you're trying to have this immersive sense of freedom and space, the stillness, and the whole sky is just covered in evidence of otherwise.
It's really, there's another example too down here as well with dark skies, which isn't exactly about sound, but it's a similar concept in terms of preserving the dark skies of places, which potentially is something that I don't know. People don't necessarily think about maybe just like soundscapes as well.
Well, yeah, they're not walking around at night, unless there's some Astro bro trying to shoot the Milky Way or something. But
that's right, exactly. So yeah, there's some really good examples, and so it's not if people are inspired by Eric's story and what he's doing here, it doesn't necessarily have to be about sound either. There's many other intrusions into these wild places that we can all work on and try and keep these places as pure as possible.
It's a really cool...
like I remember when I went to the Dolomites, I was so excited to go see these amazing mountains that I'd seen in photographs. And when I got there, I was so disappointed to see that there's a chairlift up to every single iconic lake. And there's like at least 1 or 2 huts with like restaurants and lodging like on the lake shore, like each place. And it's like, that's an example of, disturbing the space. Like instead of keeping the space open and wild, we're intruding on it. And it seemed so unnecessary. And yet everybody else around me seemed to be enjoying the moment. But maybe that's just because they were passing through quickly and they really weren't immersing themselves enough to really notice and pay attention to what it feels like and what kind of things are disturbing that feeling of being there and what kind of things aren't conducive to that experience. But yeah.
I mean, how many people do you think even have actually fully, truly experienced wilderness and been able to actually spend the amount of time to do that? I'm assuming people think being in a hut up in a lake like that is what that is, but it's to actually have that stillness, silence experience is increasingly rare.
Exactly, and that's why I didn't want to just make like another photography book of all like the iconic places of Utah with like Arches National Monument and Canyonlands and like Mesa Arch, and I wanted to focus on the negative space. I didn't like, the book is more about what isn't there rather than what is there in the photographs. And so that might seem like a daunting challenge, but I was just really I was vibing with the idea, like it just came really natural to me, and that's what I was focusing on. So I didn't have to force it. That's what I wanted to show. And yeah, that's just like what I was really appreciating, and I'll continue to appreciate it more and more now. But I think just being in lockdown during the pandemic, it just made it so the contrast was just so stark of like how it was at home, and then once I got out to these places, when I finally could, and yeah, just feeling confined with all the restrictions and everything, and then going out and just feeling completely liberated and being so grateful for that.
Mm, absolutely.
So in that book that Gordon Hempton wrote, One Square Inch of Silence, he talks about like how he was able to preserve the silence in the Hoh rainforest in that area. But also in that book, he goes on a road trip across the United States in his old VW bus, and he's a great writer too. So I really recommend reading it. But he's trying to find like the last places where you can experience natural silence without any interruption. So he comes to Utah, he goes to like Glacier or like Montana, he goes to like Florida, you know, lots of different places with big open wild spaces. And he's also traveled extensively all over the U.S. as well as around the world. And he said that in the U.S. today, there are fewer than a dozen places where you can hear undisturbed natural silence for at least 15 minutes.
Wow.
And when I read that, I was like, that's so much worse than I thought. Like,
Yeah.
because again, I
big
wasn't
country.
as aware of it. So I just kind of took it for granted. Like, you know, like Paul said, you know, a lot of places there's like a running stream, so you don't really hear anything else or things like that. But you know, you're not necessarily like hearing a plane and then counting until the next one comes, you know, unless like somebody's brought this to your attention. So when I started doing that, I was like, oh my God, he's right. And I've maybe been in like 2 of those 12 places, I think, from my experience, where yeah, I was able to experience at least 15-minute intervals of natural silence without any interruption at all. So it's I think it's a lot worse than people think, and nobody's really paying attention to it. So that's what I hope my book addresses and helps people become more aware of.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it's quite a, you know, just considering the size of the place, and to have that such few places like that, I guess is one aspect to Australia that we should definitely not take for granted, because we do have probably considerable bigger area for that silence. But I mean, I've been in the southwest of Tassie, and there's still planes flying over and other things as well. So it's everywhere has its sort of flight paths or what have you. So yeah, it's amazing. And one thing I also really appreciate about how you've gone about it is that you're kind of withholding releasing images, and actually only kind of presenting them in the book, which I think is an amazing thing to be able to do, because it you know, it's all very surprising to know what's in there. How do you find that? It must be hard to sit on some of this work, and although I guess maybe that's why, so it might be a good motivator to get the book out there so you can share it.
I always sit on my images for at least a minimum of 6 months, usually a year, sometimes a year and a half, and in this case, several years. The oldest image in the book is from 2018. So,
Wow.
in like that approach really isn't difficult for me. But the other thing that helped is that you know, obviously you're not going to use all the images you're taking of that place. So I did have like a lot of extra stuff that I just felt was a bit redundant to include in the book, that I've been releasing like separately. So also just traveling to other places that have nothing to do with this book, I can release those images in the meantime. But yeah, that was like a really important part of the experience that I hope the viewer has when they first open the book, just seeing the images for the very first time in the order that I've selected in the 3 sections. So the first section is space, and there's an essay on space and its importance, and then images that convey space, in my opinion. And then there's the stillness section, which has an essay about stillness, you know, concentration, focus, these things that are so important for us, and images that convey that. And then the last section is the silence section, which has an essay about the importance of silence and places that felt very quiet to me and look quiet in their appearance. So it was really important for me to for people to see it like in that order, grouped in that way, and also read each essay before, because the essays really don't talk so much about the desert or the place. They talk more about the importance of each of those ideas and how, the role they have in our lives and how they improve our lives and why we need to cultivate those things in ourselves. And my argument is that, without places that actually have space and stillness and silence, we're not going to be able to do that anymore, because we're just not going to have any kind of a refuge where we can go and retreat and renew those things. Because that's kind of how I feel every time, like in between trips. I'll have this amazing wilderness experience. I'll feel all zen and like have super clear thoughts and lots of inspiration. Then I get home and it slowly fades away. And like after 3 days, I'm back to where I was. I'm like, dang, I need to get that feeling again. And if I just didn't even have that, I don't know how I'd go through life. I don't think I could do it. So
there's a really famous photographer down here in Tasmania. I'm sure you come across him too, Peter Dombrovskis, and he's got a quote that's when you go out there, you don't go away from it all, you get back to it all. You come home to what's important. You come home to yourself. And I think what you're describing is precisely what his quote is there too. And it's a real desire for a lot of people, especially it's almost something that once you've experienced that, it's very hard to not want to go back and having that as part of your life. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's a great quote. I hadn't heard that before.
Oh wow, no, it's one of the best all-time photography quotes, I think.
Yeah, I don't know how I hadn't heard that yet. That's
Oh no, that's brilliant.
So part of Tasmania.
Need to watch the Wildness film, Ben. That's amazing as well. Just to talk about, it talks about Peter's life and how it all worked. And
Eric, you might really appreciate that one. It's you can actually find it released online now on YouTube, and it's just called Wildness. And it's a story of Peter Dombrovskis and Olegas Truhanas, who become sort of Peter's the only photographer in Australian history who's become inaugurated into International Hall of Fame as a photographer, and it was largely around his impact on conservation in Australia in particular. And a lot of his photographs were synonymous with the birth of the Greens Party in Australia in general, as well as the saving of some really significant areas. So that might be interesting for you to bounce off that, being in that sphere, and obviously having spent time in Tasmania yourself, you might look at it a little bit differently, or get some reflections on your own journey or your own path. And they still, even though they both passed away, they both stand alone as two of the greatest photographers in that sphere, in that realm in Australian history. No one's sort of come close to even reaching the kind of heights of how they impacted the community and the political sort of sphere as well, actually.
Absolutely.
Even just the quality.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Peter's work. It's incredible. And he has that one photo that's really famous. They call it like the photo that saved what river was it?
The Franklin River, Rock Island Bend. Yeah. A lot of people.
It's a super badass photo. Like, it's amazing. But then the story behind it is so cool. I think the Wilderness Society published it in Australia, and it was in the newspaper. And so like that's kind of the belief that I have with why nature photography can be meaningful and important if you approach it in the right way, or with that kind of mindset and intention. Because all these people were able to see that amazing photo of the Franklin River, they're like, I don't know if there was a plan to dam it. Probably.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they were like going to destroy it. Yeah.
They were like, no way, that would be the stupidest thing we could possibly do. And there's also like a contrasting story that is very tragic. From here in the Southwest, there's this place called Glen Canyon that very few people explored, but John Wesley Powell, when he did his whole voyage down the Green River, he went through Glen Canyon before he got to the Grand Canyon. And he said like that was the most remarkable, exquisite part of the entire journey, even more so than the Grand Canyon. But since nobody was familiar with it, they had proposed to dam a section of the Colorado that goes through Dinosaur National Monument, which was a monument at the time. And they're like, no way, you can't dam a monument. And they're like, well, what if we dam Glen Canyon instead, which is famously known now as a place that no one knew, because it was just a nondescript canyon to most people. And they dammed it. And now it's Lake Powell. So it's completely flooded. People take houseboats on there and stuff. But underneath the surface is the most possibly the most remarkable canyon landscape in southern Utah and maybe the entire desert Southwest. So, like Elliot Porter and other people were able to photograph it, but maybe not quite in time, or maybe they weren't able to reach enough people to share the beauty that it had. But that's kind of a hope that I have with modern nature photography, that we can all encourage people and educate them on how valuable these places are in their pure and natural states. So
we actually have a very similar story down here with the damming of Lake Pedder, and it was also one of the gems of the Southwest. And there's actually a campaign at the moment to drain the man-made lake to restore the prior one, and we actually had Tabitha Badger, who's leading up that on the show last couple episodes ago. So yeah, it's definitely some interesting work going on around that sort of stuff, but it really does show the power of photography and how that can help in these instances. And yeah, definitely some interesting stories about Lagos Trichonis trying to save Lake Pedder before it got flooded, and his photos getting burnt down in a bushfire, and not having those photos to be able to use to promote or to help save the lake and all sorts. So it's very much a big part of our horrible history side of things. But yes, definitely, it's some sad stories there. Sorry,
yeah,
Paul.
I'm sure you guys are all familiar with Yosemite. It's super famous. Not far from there's another valley called Het Hetchy, which was dammed in the last century. And naturalists have also said that was even more, some have said it was even more exquisite and remarkable than Yosemite Valley. So it's like, wow. Tragedy.
Yeah, that's saying something.
Yeah.
But what I liked about the Pedder campaign that Luke was talking about is, imagine if that campaign was successful and they modeled to the world that it was possible to actually rehabilitate places and correct mistakes that were made in the past, rather than just trying to prevent atrocities in the future. Like, that's kind of a different concept, I think, that not so many people play with. And I don't know how robust the landscape is underneath the surface of Powell, and obviously, that area of the world is pretty committed to that as a water supply for other reasons, and it's not just a simple fix. But as a principle, that actually arguing towards and using conservation towards the restoration of places that have already been covered up is kind of a different way to approach things, but also I think worthwhile having in mind.
Yeah, maybe you can't restore it back to its original state within our lifetime, but it's like, it would at least be better than how it is now. But like with Lake Powell, there would just be like so many like drowned houseboats and like trash and stuff. Like I think it was in the 80s or during some like big financial crisis, a lot of people that had these super expensive houseboats were sinking them on purpose to claim insurance money because they were going bankrupt. And so like insurance companies were hiring scuba divers to go down and search for these missing boats to see if they could find evidence to not have to pay out the insurance claim because the person had sunk it on purpose. Like, so it's been trash, and like it would be a whole mess to clean everything out, and it's really been not treated respectfully. Or
Lake Pedder is super remote, so it's still a pretty pure and pristine environment around it, and they have had divers. Yeah, they've had divers go down there. Actually, have pretty much suggested that it's basically intact underneath, and it wouldn't take that long to restore it to close to what it was. Yeah, slightly different context, I guess. I wasn't thinking about insurance drowned houseboats. Oh God. So, Eric, is there, like, as much as we have these ideas and these aims and these goals, like, there needs to be a little bit of political weight or some political allies to actually create change on a legislative kind of level. Is there much of a movement nationally? Is there much groundwork? Is there big players that have vested interest in supporting, the conservation from sound and vision, that kind of thing as well? Or do you feel a bit out on your own, or what's the political sphere in that regard?
Well, yeah, there is Quiet Parks International, which I think has a bit of, swaying power with convincing people, because they are an official organization, everything, and they do this research that they can present and stuff. But yeah, I wish I could talk more about that. The way I see it is no one person can fix these problems. they require millions of different people doing millions of different things. And so my tiny little thing that I can contribute is going out to places that most people wouldn't go to otherwise and photographing them in ways that most people wouldn't photograph them, showing my unique perspective, which can hopefully impact people in a different way or in an additional way than other people's photographs. So I think you can get really discouraged if you try to like foolishly put it all on yourself instead of just saying like, this is my small contribution. It's the best that I can do. It's not all up to me. And I hope that other people that have other skills will contribute as well so that we can all kind of put in our own small piece of the enormous puzzle that it is.
I think even the Peter Dombrowskis example sort of shows that. I think he was taking those photos anyway, and they just decided to select the photos that they actually did for the campaign. So it's not like he's gone out there to shoot for the campaign directly, is my understanding. So point being that you're putting out this body of work, and who knows what also might come from it. And maybe it's just the book and that's it, or maybe it goes further than that. But the point is that you've found meaning in what you're doing as well, and you believe you're doing what's best for these places, and that's you can't go wrong with that. In any case, it's better than sitting down all day playing video games or something. So
yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah, for sure. I think we might just before we get onto seeing some photos from the few that you've released, I was just wanted to touch back on that little topic of sort of selecting what is relevant to the book versus what is okay to release and doesn't quite relate. So I noticed you put out your latest gallery release was actually Utah. I think it's titled Vermilion Dreams, which is more sort of the Canyonlands and stuff. So was that sort of, did you feel that the Canyonlands, because they're a bit more sort of tight and enclosed, that they were less of the space and like the space sort of side of things? Or was there another reason that you felt that was not with the theme of the book enough to release as their own separate gallery?
So since I spend so much time in the desert here, I probably make like 40, 50 trips a year, and like it's so close I can go for 2, 3, 4 nights at a time, and that's really nice too because I like to spend time with my kids and not be away for super long amounts of time. So that also influenced my change in focusing on more local places rather than traveling internationally like I used to so often. So in terms of photographs from this place, I'm pretty prolific. Like I'll make hundreds each year that end up in my portfolio at some point. Yeah. Just because of the abundant subject matter and just this ability that I've developed to just see things that interest me. And so the reason I released that gallery instead of including those images in the book was just frankly because I had too many images, and there's only so many pages, and I feel like there's kind of a sweet spot. Like you want to have enough images, because I feel like a lot of times when a book comes and it's pretty thin, I'm like disappointed, like they didn't take advantage of the medium, because I want to see like a good amount. But if there's too many, then the theme that you have in mind or the idea can just become more diluted. Or if the images are redundant, instead of just including the best version of that kind of scene or that kind of feeling or whatever you're trying to portray, the other ones that aren't as good can just dilute the good ones. So there is like a lot of curation in that, and so I was just saving all of my images just in case, and putting them all in a gallery and seeing which ones look good next to each other. And then I started creating the book and choosing, like image pairings, because there are quite a few double page spreads. But most of the images are just on a single page. And so it's really important what image they're next to in the book. And so there were just like outliers or, similar scenes that I liked more. Just a lot of it was mainly due to redundancy. And so once I had finished the book, I was like, okay, I'll start releasing some galleries of not necessarily like B-sides, like they're not inferior images, it's just extras that didn't make it in.
No, it's a good problem to have, I suppose. Is you can never have enough Eric Bennett photography out there. So that's cool. Just wanted to sort of hear your insight.
I mean, like for right now, I'm like, I could stop making photographs, and like between my book and the galleries that I'm sitting on that I haven't released yet, I could release like 3 galleries a year for like the next 5 years. That's like how much work I have edited and ready to go. So
fantastic. That's
Wow.
yeah, prolific's the word. Hey, no, very good.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah, another one. Cool. Well, we might start looking at some photos actually from the few that you've just to give us a bit of a taster for what will be in there. So yeah, feel free to share your screen and we'll have a little look. Fantastic.
Yeah, so when Ben asked me to come on again and this time, talk about this book and share some stuff from it, it was kind of tricky because I am wanting people to see these images for the first time in the book. So I haven't been sharing any of these images that are exclusive for the book. However, there were like a dozen scenes that I have released in the past that I just felt were kind of classic images, and I never really photographed anything like them that was better. And so I do have about 12 images in the book that I have released before, just because I felt like they needed to be in there. So I'll go through those, and then also with this book, I'm offering a collector's edition as part of the pre-order sale. So it's only available until October 31st when the pre-order window ends. I've selected 5 prints, so you can purchase a book with your choice of print, or you can purchase the book with all 5 prints. And so I'll be sharing those images as well, since I've published them on my website so that people can see and pick which one they want. So
yeah,
I have a decent amount that'll at least give people an idea of what's in here. But yeah, the main intention with this book would be that it's all brand new, never before seen images. And yeah,
there's something.
And just in terms of the book
about
design, sorry, Ben.
I was just going to say there's something really special about images that we haven't yet seen that will only take place in physical form rather than the usual just sort of everything's digital, and if you get a physical, tangible option to look at a photo if you're lucky. So I think
sort of speaks on to the topic, doesn't it, about having to actually be there and experience this. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to sit down in a conducive place to looking at the book, and you got to sit still, and a book encourages you to take your time and things like that. So yeah, it was just like another level of the idea behind this book that I felt was a important part of it. Another little caveat is like I don't have any aerial images in this book because you have to use a drone.
Yep.
I have nothing against using drones, but I just felt for this
sound.
it just wasn't conducive because they're noisy, they're annoying. Like when somebody else is flying a drone, I'm like, dude, get the fuck out of here. But so I just didn't want to include drone images because it's kind of contradictory. Like I really wanted to be as I wanted to convey this as purely and effectively as possible. So
no, that's brilliant.
That's another little thing.
I was just interested too in terms of the design. Is it the same form factor as your last book, and is this sort of like just almost a square shape, but slightly taller?
It is square. It's 11 by 11, so same exact dimensions, number of pages, layout, and everything. Because this is actually the second book of a series that I'm doing, so I want all of them to have a similar feeling and look good next to each other on the bookshelf, fit nice and cozy. Yeah. So for the next few books I'll be doing, they'll all be like this, with same materials and design and dimensions and things like that.
Makes heaps of sense.
Yeah, cool. Love to see some whatever you've got prepared for us here.
Tell us about the cover shot there.
Yeah, so I'll talk about this image without the text and stuff in a second, but I just wanted to point out, Craig Childs wrote the foreword. I hope most photographers are familiar with him. He's not a photographer. For my last book, I had William Neal write the foreword, which was amazing. He's just a legend and everybody looks up to him, and that was a huge honor. For this book, I just couldn't quite find a photographer that just felt right for it, for whatever reason. And I kind of just had this pipe dream to ask Craig Childs, who is one of my favorite authors and is known by many as the godfather of the Southwest. He's written like over a dozen books he's a journalist, and so he's written about the Anasazi Native Americans that used to live here, and like the way they would migrate around the landscape and how they would live in harmony with the landscape, and all these interesting things. He's written about his own experiences where he's backpacked extensively into super remote corners of the Colorado Plateau He's written about people stealing artifacts, conservation, all sorts of different topics, mostly based around the Colorado Plateau. And so I was just like, this guy, that would be the perfect person. And I've never talked to him. I didn't have like a contact or anything. And so I just emailed him through his website. I found him on Facebook and I added him, and I kind of just tracked him down and was bugging him because he's a busy guy. But I just felt like it was worth asking him. The worst that he could say was no. And on the slight chance that he would say yes, it would just be like my dream would be fulfilled, and it would just like be the perfect addition to this book. And luckily he said yes. He looked at the PDF I sent him. He said he really enjoyed the imagery, that it reminded him of the way that he sees the landscape. And so he just really connected with it and thought it was really special and unique, which was a huge thing for me because he's somebody that has, 60 years of experience exploring around here.
Wow.
So yeah, I just want to point that out. If you're not familiar with him, you should read all of his books. I would recommend you start with The Secret Knowledge of Water. That talks about erosion and how the desert landscape is formed, like canyons, badlands, all different kinds of geological formations. Also, The House of Rain is a very intriguing book about the Anasazi and trying to figure out why they disappeared and kind of vanished off the face of the earth, what happened to them and all that. But every single book he's written is amazing, and I consider him one of my top 3 favorite authors ever. So yeah, I definitely wanted to point that out because that was a huge honor. And then also David Thompson, his name isn't on the cover, but he wrote the introduction. David Thompson has been a mentor to me as well as a really great friend over the years. He's also a father and a husband. He's given me tons of advice just in my personal life. He's just always been there and supported me and helped me to grow not only as an artist, but as a person and a husband and father. And so he also has a really deep connection with this landscape. He's been shooting it even longer than I have. And so I thought he would be the perfect person to write an introduction and kind of, since he knows me, talk about me a little bit and, his times photographing with me and how I approach things. So that was also a huge honor. And thanks a lot, David, if you're watching this.
Did you, Dave's also an excellent curator. Did you lean on him a little bit for the curation of the book?
So putting together a huge project that you have to pay thousands of dollars to produce and then hope that people will buy it so you can at least make your money back is a pretty daunting thing, especially if you've never received any kind of validation on the photographs. And so David Thompson was actually the only person throughout the process that saw any of these images. And so he would give me opinions on, maybe the order of images, maybe ones that weren't as strong that I should take out and other ones that should take their place. I would bounce stuff off of him every few months and show him my new work. And so that was actually a really important part of this. And I'm glad you mentioned that because, he is the only person that has seen this book besides Craig Childs now.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Getting ahead from the right man there, brother.
Good counsel. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel really fortunate to have a friend like that is willing to share his time with me and give me his honest opinion too. Like, it's one thing to have a friend that gives you a pat on the back all the time and makes you feel really good. It's another thing to have a friend that's honest with you and is like, hey man, I think you got better stuff. I think you could do this idea better. You could execute it better. Maybe it's not the best representation of this idea, things like that. Like, because otherwise you might be putting some out that you think is amazing and maybe it's just super esoteric and like nobody can really connect with it. Maybe you feel a certain way about the image, but those feelings don't come through for the viewer. And that's such an important part of art because at the end of the day, why share your work if it's not about making somebody else feel the same way as you or think the same way as you or influence them in some way?
How do you
technical
that line, Eric, between commercial viability and the personal ethos that you're trying to present? Like it's tricky, like you said, because there's big money involved. There's publishers involved that want certain outcomes and volumes of sales, and it's a bit of a dance when you're an artist at heart. I think for all of us, really. What's your sort of take? How do you sort of navigate that line?
I have always just hoped that I can go out to the places that I want to go to, spend time in them in the way that I want to spend time in them, and photograph things that I connect with in the way that I want to photograph them. And things will just work out, because if they don't, then it's not worth it to me to do anything else. Like, that's the gratification I get from photography. It wouldn't be fulfilling to me otherwise. And so I feel extremely lucky that I have been able to be financially successful as a photographer for the last 10 years, able to take care of my family, have all the things we need, and not have to make any kind of artistic sacrifices or compromises. And like I said, like with my first book, I could have saved a lot of money if I had just gone with the first publisher, but that could have ruined my credibility for my next book. Maybe people are like, oh, it's not that nice. His images look better online. Why am I going to bother buying his next book? And I'm the kind of person, like, I'm always seeing ahead. I'm always, like, the stuff I release is not my latest work. I'm always like working on new ideas, new things, new goals. I'm a project type of person. So I think long term, at least when it comes to my artwork. And so I was thinking, like, I don't want to just like, maybe be financially successful with my first book, but then ruin my credibility with the quality or something like that just to save some money. I'm trying to think how I can gain trust from my audience and have them know that Eric is always going to give it his all and do his very best to make everything the very best that he possibly can. And that's also just like a selfish reason. Like, if I'm not happy with it, I'm not going to show it to anybody. So I want my books to be something that I can sit down and look at 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now and be satisfied with them and not feel like I held out or made a sacrifice or a compromise that I wasn't comfortable with. The most important thing at the end of the day is to satisfy myself. And I feel like if you're truly satisfying yourself with your art, you may not satisfy everybody. It's actually impossible to satisfy everybody, but you might satisfy enough people on a deep enough level because they see things in a similar way that you do, or they have a connection with the places that you photograph, or your philosophies or things like that. You can impact those people on a deep level. And I think that's where you're going to gain the most support in terms of not only encouragement, but also financial success, because they're going to feel like they want to invest in your work. They want to hang your stuff on their wall. They connect with it. And so they feel like, in a way, it's also kind of the way that they would see the world or something. And so I've always just gone for like depth instead of breadth. I don't care about having a large audience. I care about having a supportive audience that trusts me, and I don't ever want to break that trust with them or have them feel like, they can't, like they just can't believe in me anymore.
It sounds like consistency is also big important thing there. I was interested in terms of your, I guess, pre-production with it too, and getting the color spaces right and that kind of thing. Did you work with a printer, or you sort of had a bit of experience last time and knew what to do there, just in terms of doing a conversion to CMYK and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so that's the thing with this book. It was actually really, well, so far it's not done being printed yet, but I've reviewed the proof prints and they looked amazing. So it's been really easy to print this book because of the subject matter. When you guys think of space, for example, what kind of images come to mind?
Like very simple blue or something, pastel colors or soft colors. I don't know.
Sort of more minimalist, visually quiet, like not too many distracting features, simple shapes, curves tend to slow down and meander the eye rather than linear kind of features, more so. Simple color palettes, sort of less bold and sort of avert any face, smooth, and then sort of element of smoothness. So I'm just
openness, like wide spaces, vastness.
So you guys think like I do, but I think like the typical person would imagine like big open skies, images with a horizon, like wide angle scenes, conveying space in that traditional, that kind of stereotypical way. But I didn't want this to be a predictable book where people could even guess what kind of imagery is going to be in here. And so that's not the way that I conveyed space at all. Like I went with more of a minimalist approach, simplicity, A lot of the scenes in the space section, as you'll see, are small scenes. They're very intimate scenes, but they have a simplicity to them. They're not cluttered. They're well organized. They're clean, because they convey a feeling of space that way. So I didn't want the photography to be predictable or anything. So a lot of the photography is very simple in this book, and I don't even have a single sky in the entire book. Everything is shot below the horizon. So that's like kind of where you have a lot of complications, like clouds turning weird colors, or the blue of your sky turning weird colors, or gradients getting messed up or getting banding. So this book, like, the imagery is really simple in terms of technical, like, printing stuff. So all the conversions to CMYK, I had like no issues because they have very basic color palettes. There are only a few images I had to tweak a little bit, and then yeah, the printer gives me a color profile, so it'll look exactly the same way when I send it to them. And I actually ended up just creating an action that would just, resize, sharpen, convert each file, and so that was like a really quick way to do it. Yeah, didn't have any issues at all. So,
Eric, have you heard of an Australian photographer called Ricardo de Cunha?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, he's very, 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 very close friend of mine. He's part of a group, the Like Collective, and he created a book about 3-4 years ago called Space for the Soul to Breathe. And his work is a little different from yours in that it's a little bit more conceptual and composite orientated, but it's sort of narrative and storytelling about. It includes some human elements and man-made elements sometimes as well. But it's he speaks a lot and he evokes a lot all the way through the book, and alludes to using, and I think it's kind of interesting that we picked up on it straight away about that space and stillness isn't necessarily translated to the obvious visual features we think of. It's a concept, it's an idea, and it's represented in lots of different, more subtle aspects of the way things are done. And I think if you get a chance to connect with his work, and he also actually included a connection to music that you could link to through the book as well, and make that part of the kind of multi-sensory experiences of connecting with the work, which I thought was really interesting. But his ethos is quite similar to yours, and his motivation also is quite similar. So just I might send you a link offline to just connect with you. I think you might really appreciate it.
Maybe you could ship with some
do.
sound cancelling headphones or something, just to get the silence. No, it's the idea.
Yeah,
that sounds really cool. So this is the uncropped photo that is obviously the cover of the book. It's titled Downward, and I think people, when it comes to like choosing the cover image for a book, it's a big decision, right? It kind of can influence somebody to pick up the book or not be interested. So in a way, you want to grab attention, but also convey what the book is about somehow in a single image, which isn't always easy, depending on how broad your topic is. So this was an image that just happened to become the cover, pretty much. Not really any crazy story behind it. I felt like it conveyed all three things: space, stillness, silence. There is visual movement, but it's these rocks and these badlands that are petrified, and it's an open area. And this is quite a large scene. It is like a grand landscape. I would consider it to be. These alluvial fans, and I was kind of trying to figure out what the cover would be, and then I photographed this earlier in the year. And what's funny is, typically when I find something I really like, I spend at least 5-10 minutes with it, refining my composition, zooming in a bit more, tweaking my perspective. But this particular photo, I was just climbing up to the top of this really high mesa to get to kind of get an aerial view of all these badlands around me. And I made like dozens of photographs that morning that are in the book. It was an amazing morning. But this particular photograph I took while I was like halfway up. I was just hiking. I saw this scene. I turned, set up my camera, took one exposure, and literally just kept hiking. Like, I didn't even review it. I didn't even think about it. It was just like a very intuitive moment. And I actually didn't even realize I'd shot the photo until I came home and was like reviewing. And then once I saw it, I could remember the moment. But I was like, wow, that's so amazing that I didn't even take another exposure just to make sure it wasn't like there wasn't any movement, or I didn't like play around. I mean, I probably played around the perspective, but I didn't take any more exposures with different things that I tried out. And it was, I don't know, it was just a photo that kind of intuitively worked and everything just clicked together. And it might sound kind of silly, but the way it feels like now is, instead of like in recent years, instead of going out and hunting for photographs or trying to find things to photograph, or trying to make things photogenic, in a lot of ways it feels like, I'm not saying that this is how it is, because this is going to sound very mystical, and I'm not a mystical person. I'm atheist, and I don't believe in many things that I can't touch or see or feel myself, except based on the silence. It feels like nature kind of tells me what to photograph, and according to what the light illuminates, or certain things, like I'll just see them like already composed and it's ready to go a lot of times. And I don't know, it feels like these scenes find me in a way, and I'm instead of being like a creator, it feels more like I'm just a channel for these things to be expressed. As silly as that might sound, that's just really how it feels. Like, it's just become really intuitive now, and I see things and they're already like presented as photographs to me in a way. So this
You
is
sort
one of
of
those
mentioned
moments
that.
where
I'm sorry. You
no,
mentioned
go
how
ahead.
you spend a lot of time out there. You're obviously at the top of your game, so you don't have any of the technical aspects getting in the way of your thought process there, and you really can just be completely immersed and be receptive to those those light patterns or what have you, and just reactive and know instinctively what to do. So it's sort of almost like a you're sort of hitting the top straps there, or however you'd say it, and able to do that. So that's
Yeah,
must be very meaningful.
I'm not trying to say it like in a cocky way though, like, oh, I don't even have to try, but like it really feels like I don't have to try to find photographs anymore. Like it really feels like they just find me in a way, and it's just like this. I guess it's just like the connection you have with the place. There's just like no barrier, and you're just, I don't know. There's just like
There's
nothing in the way of like,
That's awesome.
beautiful quote, Eric, that I came across about 20 years ago, because I'm very aligned with your style of engagement, and I feel very similar in that regard. And I came across this quote, and I've lost the author off the top of my head, but it's very simple, and I've used it actually in some of my own exhibitions. Spirit stands still long enough for the photographer it has chosen. And to me, that speaks a lot of the surrender and openness. And I wouldn't say it's a passive process, because it's very active, getting yourself out there in the right places at the right time, the right light. But I'm very similar in that regard. I don't have a fixed outcome in mind. I'm not making a photograph. I'm offering myself as a receptacle for what the world wants to present to me, and what wants to come through into my camera. And I find that I really like that from an aerial perspective sometimes as well, because it's not the kind of environment you can actually plan a photograph. The compositions change every second. It becomes a real flow state experience. And a lot of the times I have no idea what I'm going to capture, what I'm going to come away with. And I really like that. And it's quite surprising sometimes what comes back. So I feel like, there's a few kindred spirits out there, brother. But Luke's got a really good point. You kind of need to be on your game technically, so that's not interfering your process, or lifting you back into a cerebral place when you want to be in a more intuitive place at the time. And you do need to put the 10,000 hours, I think, into to know your craft well enough to know that you're just really a pure vessel, rather than an interactive kind of technical process. But this image really speaks to me beautifully of a lot of things, Eric. It's very present with the long-standing geological processes of this landscape as well. And there's that tiny little but very significant element of poise of that rock just right on the edge there, that you just wonder how long it's been there, what it would take to just nudge it over. And
Yeah,
the age of the landscape, the beautiful diagonal flow running down left to right, that I think is really crucial to the compositional elements here, that it just wanders down in the bottom right corner, and almost like feels like it physically links with that range down below, like a line that just circles you back up through the frame. It's kind of an unconventional photo, I think, in my mind. First of all, when I thought you chose it as a cover, I had to really sit with it, and the more I do,
I
the
saw
more
this one here almost looks like it's kind of like a face looking down over the view, like you, even though it's not about like a particular. There's no people in it, but it's almost like there is still a spectator there or something like that in the picture. But yeah, I kind of like that too.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because that's something that I've kind of recognized, but I was like, oh, no one else would probably feel that way. But it was also an afterthought too. It's like, I wouldn't say it's like a super important part of the story of the scene, but it's just like another little additional element that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it must have been hard cropping it square too, not having that beautiful lead in from the bottom right there, but it still works. Obviously, totally fine. But yeah, it's a wonderful shot.
Yeah, it feels like a symbology of that witness kind of state of being in, like a witnessing a landscape, not sort of impressing yourself on it or wanting to take from it. And there's an element of guardianship, I guess, in terms of the ethos of your approach from a conservation point of view as well, which I think that sort of metaphorically speaks to that face. Yeah, beautifully seen, Lukey.
I love the hint of red too in that one, the foreground, just to lift it a bit as well.
It's really
yeah.
It's quite crucial, actually, I think.
I think that speaks to, like, you said you sort of rattled the shot off as you're going up, but it's, still technically done so well, and you got two very different focal planes or depth of field going on there to control that and all of that. Must have been pretty sketchy up there too. By the looks, it doesn't look like it's a particularly stable kind of.
Yeah,
it's a really, really steep and crumbly trail to get to the top.
That's awesome.
Hats off.
Such a foreign landscape to us.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Wow.
This is one of the images that I released. I took it back in 2018, but I think I released it probably in 2019. Before I had this book in mind, but I just felt like this was a no-brainer, just conveying space. So yeah, these first images are from the space section.
Yeah.
It is kind of a classic space scene, but still there's no sky or anything. I didn't want to convey openness kind of by that. It's not really like a cheap trick, but it's just like kind of like the stereotypical go-to if you want to portray that feeling. I wanted to challenge myself to convey these ideas in a more creative and interesting way. So yeah, and this one's from Canyonlands. It's a viewpoint that a lot of people shoot.
I for some reason don't recognize this one, so I'm seeing this for the first time. So it's a fantastic shot. Like just the little sort of pale cliff tops, like at first made me think of snow. No, that's just
calcite or something on the edges.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, just the dappled light and the flow through, and yeah, it just you get this sense of space between you and the subject. Like it doesn't feel like it's right there, which is the sort of wide angle trend is to feel like you're right there. Like it's only a compelling photo if you feel like you're standing 2 centimeters away from the foreground flowers, kind of thing. But this is so compelling despite so much distance. And I think it's really well executed, and just beautiful tones and light and shape all throughout.
Well,
little hints of the highlights of the sky, and this little river over here just fills up what would otherwise be quite a dark, empty space. And it's gorgeous.
I love that almost perfect semicircle in the cliff line there as well. It's very very interesting.
Yeah, the visual flow of this and the dappled light are really crucial, I think, to sort of popping you through the frame and pulling you through the frame, particularly the highlight to the back end and the flowing kind of river space. It's sort of making me smile seeing this area because I've never touched foot in this place, but I've actually flown over it in a microlight. And I've literally was just recognizing in my head the exact photos of these features I've got from top down. And I was thinking, oh my God, what must it be like to actually be there? And I've rarely seen photographs because I haven't scoured a lot of the work that's been done there. And I'm just like, yeah, it was one of my most incredible experiences of space, it was the first time I've been in a vehicle in the sky that has a 360-degree view. And so the sense of space that I had as an aerial photographer was like nothing I've experienced at the same time. And it was actually in this landscape. And it was the first time I'd ever flown in a microlight was that very morning. So it's sort of, space it's a relative term and it's still applicable up in the air as it is on the ground.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't recommend sort of having emergency landings on nearby highways so that's not so good.
You and your stories, Paul.
Having to get the tape out and watch out for trucks to get back up in the air again.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so there's another image I took in the same area on the same day, maybe just like an hour later. Yeah, another one that I've already released, but none of these ones that I released before were in my last book either. So that was another important thing. I didn't want any repetition in my book series. So
yep.
Is this early morning, or it's got some long shadows there?
Yeah.
It's like mid-afternoon, I think.
Mid-afternoon, okay.
Yeah.
Is it obviously like a semi-cloudy day with dappled light by looks?
Yeah. That's like those are some of my favorite days to photograph, like big overviews like this, like big overlooks. You can just zoom in and pick out different things as they get lit up, and that's really where it feels like nature is telling you what to look at, because like the spotlight will hit something and you're like, whoa, and then you'll shoot that and it'll be gone, and then it'll light something else up, and it's like this really cool conversation with nature that you can have.
And it breaks up landscape. It breaks up a big landscape really beautifully, doesn't it, as well? Particularly when you're on such a broad scene. Sometimes it's you need something to help direct your isolation, and in this case, the light's kind of doing it for you.
Yeah, dappled light can really give you like some of the best separation. A lot of subjects that would go unnoticed in lighting that is illuminating the entire landscape can really sing when they're illuminated and surrounded by darkness, or it gives you a lot more opportunities that you wouldn't have in conventional lighting on any given day.
Yeah, I love that.
Look great as monos as well.
I love the little structure right in the middle, which I assume is what really drew your eye to the comp there. But just that, that kind of the thin and the wide one right next to each other, just being backlit with dappled light, like sort of shadow either side of them is fantastic. Yeah, that's really good.
Thanks, mate.
Pillars.
So these next images are from, well, let's see, I might have skipped one actually. Oh yeah, here we go. So this is the last one that I'll share from the space section. This is a really intimate, small scene. It's not mud, it's not sandstone. It's considered mudstone, so it's really fragile. And when it rains or anything, it can create these cool dimples and like ripples like it does in mud or snow. But they become a little bit more solidified. And this is one I released a few years ago. But I have a lot more images from this same area that I took on the same day that I saved for the book that I really like. So yeah, just the minimalism here, the spacing of the lines and the simplicity I felt conveyed that idea.
Yeah, fascinating subject. Like it is reminiscent of like sastrugi in snow, like that kind of thing. Or just like a really high key sort of sand swept or sandstone kind of thing. So it's is it that sort of like pale appearance in reality? It's like it's
white.
Yeah, wow. What's the sort of geology behind that with the sand or the sort of sediment there being really pale?
Yeah, it's just like kind of a clay, and in this area there are lots of hoodoos, so like since it's so soft, the rain will just erode it, and then there's like big sections that have been spared by the erosion, and they become these like really big towers and stuff. So it's just like this deposit of this really soft clay that hardened, but it's also soft enough to continually erode, and like if you walk on this, you'll leave footprints, you'll completely destroy it. Really fragile.
Could you does like this same sort of phenomenon appear in other types of clay with like red or brown, or is it really just this very specific type?
Yeah, I have seen some that are kind of orange or brown in this area, but there's like a whole section that has a lot of this white mudstone all over.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, cool.
Sort of a little bit.
These ones,
Staying on that for a little bit, Eric. It's almost like the in between that really speaks to me. Like there's a fragility and an age and a almost like a lace like texture sort of on the areas in between that's somehow scoured that speaks in different ways from the curvaceous kind of shapes of the edges. It's not a sort of texture I'm familiar with seeing, and you can't quite tell if it's kind of, you could lean down and blow with your mouth and half of it would disappear. Like it has a characteristic and a quality that doesn't quite feel solid, which I think really speaks to that delicacy of the landscape that you're alluding to. Yeah. Ward as well.
Cool.
All right, keen to see a few more shots. Yeah, let's get
You're about to head into autumn over there, aren't you, Eric?
What's that?
You're just on the verge of autumn over there.
Yeah, maybe 3 more weeks we'll start seeing some color. It's the last few years it's been later than normal, so probably October, first week of October will be really good.
run us through this one.
So yeah, these next ones are from the Stillness section, and so the first section, space, typically focuses on badlands and like canyon lands, not like slot canyons, like inside canyons, but like the images that I shared, overlooks and things like that.
Yeah.
The Stillness section, I decided for the subject matter, what conveys stillness better in nature than trees? They live their entire lives in a single spot. They're very stoic. They're very mindful. They're very patient beings, and I think it would be really remarkable if we had to live out our entire lives in a single space. And so, yeah, this section mainly focuses on trees and plants of the desert. These are some cottonwoods here, which are one of my favorite trees to photograph. Usually find them in canyons near water because they do need a lot of water. You don't really find them in the arid badlands or other areas like that. And
they're the same leaves as the front cover of your last one.
Nah, yeah. So, cottonwood leaves.
Yeah.
It's a tree I really connect with, and in the fall, not only does it turn amazing colors, but you can see its gnarled structure. It has these like really crazy like spider-like arms and things. Usually they're always different shapes. No two cottonwood trees look alike, and these are Fremont cottonwoods to be specific. But yeah, I just really love their character and their weathered look, and the beautiful colors that you see in fall as well.
You don't always see Guy Tell in the corner there somewhere, mate. Peeking around the back of the tree at you.
Have you ever run into Guy out there?
No, I haven't. He probably never will. He kind of avoids. I mean, I get into pretty remote places where I never see anybody else, but he like purposely avoids anywhere that anybody goes, and seems to have his own little special secret spots that he goes to over and over again.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, he knows it well.
Some more cottonwoods in the fall.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's
got much more sort of very much more pink sort of pastel color there, as opposed to the slightly more blue gold. It's warm.
Bit of magenta in there, Eric. Bit of magenta, mate.
No, I wouldn't dare.
I don't know. No, yeah, beautiful. I love the really consistent color of the leaves. Works well here too. Like the more consistent golden throughout, and then the subtle blue tones as well. Yeah, it sort of moves you through the frame a bit more gently, having that evenness of hue. Yeah, so which
it's nice. All of those V's are sort of coming out from the same point at the base too, and just like that. You got those three back there.
Yeah, you've kind of got those mirroring in the bottom left and bottom right corner, like the branches kind of going out to sort of create that balance there. Works really nicely. Yeah.
It's not often you get a very gentle feeling in what is generally quite a sort of high contrast and highly textural kind of subject matter, but you sort of done that somehow through that, almost like a soft filter through to the background as well.
Like there or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just like the distance of the wall, so it's not as sharp with the f-stop I was using. It's slightly softened because that helped to create additional contrast of the textured branches against the wall. I didn't want the wall to, I just wanted it to fill the gaps. I didn't want people to actually arrive to the wall in the background. But the main like pastel soft look that you're talking about, that comes from the reflected light, which is like one of the most special things about photographing in these canyons. Because they are very red and orange, vermilion, very warm colors. When the sunlight hits them directly, there'll be this incredible bounce light that will just bathe everything in the opposite direction, and that's what you're seeing here. So you get like really nice cool shadows, really nice golden warm light. That's not necessarily coming from above. A lot of times it can come from the ground. Even if the light's hitting the ground, it'll bounce up, or it'll come from the side, which gives you really nice separation. And I think it's like every photographer's like dream light. It's really like just amazing to photograph, and I never get tired of it. Shout out to Ben Horn, because I know he's a huge fan of reflected light, if he's watching this. But yeah, it just creates really nice soft contrast too, really dreamy look.
Yeah, beautiful.
And this one is quite different lighting. So in this case, it was really shaded, so the canyon wall appears a lot more blue, a lot cooler, because it wasn't getting hit by any sunlight. It was towards the end of the day. And this is actually not quite sure what kind of tree this is. I should probably figure that out. But yeah, it's not a cottonwood here this time. And this is one of the images. This one is glow in the dark. That is available as a print in the collector's edition, as well as the cover image that we shared.
Yeah, cool. Beautiful. What do you use a particular paper to that you really enjoy for showcasing your sort of style of work for those prints?
Yeah,
I just print on luster paper. I don't like high gloss or anything like that. I like it to be a bit more matte finish, or satin is really nice as well. So anything along those lines turns out just fine. Yeah, nice.
I
actually don't have a printer myself, so I don't physically print my own work. I'll just use like a print lab and order them online. So yeah, haven't experimented too much with different papers and things like that.
Yeah, it's a whole other world. Hey, it's
another rabbit hole there, brother.
Yeah.
I really love printing. Like I print every single image at least once just to see it as a print, because to me that is like the ultimate final product. That's like the final stage of a photograph, and how it should be viewed at some point. That's why I love making books, because you get to see a collection of my prints for an affordable price. It's just the best way to appreciate them. But yeah, I haven't gotten my own printer because I'm gone a lot. I know you need to print like at least once a month, or else the ink cartridges can get jammed or whatever, or things like that. So yeah, just not really willing to invest the money in it right now. But
there's TJ.
Just wanted to invest tens of thousands of dollars into books instead.
yeah.
There you go. TJ Thorne in the landscape photography worldwide Discord that I help run is because he's been obviously probably very familiar with what he's been going through with the whole printing stuff, but he's bought his big printer, and he's there's been a few conversations in there as he tried to figure out what paper he uses and all that stuff. And it's like I experimented with different papers, and I outsource as well, so I can't imagine how complicated it is trying to do it yourself. So
it'd be a lot easier if you're just using sheet paper like A2 or like I think that's what Paul does as well, don't you, Paul?
Yeah, sheet up to A2. Like I haven't invested in anything bigger because I actually don't think it's worth it. And if you have a really good relationship with a printer, anything large is probably not a more cost-effective way to go. But it's super empowering and really fun. And the small printers like the A2, A3 plus, A2 printers, they're not that big an investment. And if you just select a couple of papers that you've researched to know they're already along the aesthetic that suits your work quite consistently, that would be the way I'd sort of move into it. And I've literally left mine for 3, 4, 5 months at a time, Eric, and come back and it works fine. So
yeah, same with mine.
I don't think that's quite the argument that it used to be. And I think it was very, very difficult to get the whole process of color management in place at home. And these days it's kind of not. It's taken a long time for it to get there, but there's a lot of sort of nuance and systems that are set up now to get you going fairly quickly, particularly if you have a hardware color pattern screen, or at the very least just a system for color managing whatever screen you're using. It's But yeah, I started in the days where it was difficult. It took a long freaking time, mate. And I did a lot of study with people like Les Walkling, who's probably the greatest mind in color management in Australia. And the guy just melts your brain. Like, it took me a long time to wrap my head around it. But it is a great skill set to have. And if you're working with printers or even publishers, it is useful. I mean, you've obviously got around it and found a way to get the product you want anyway. Yeah, I wouldn't count it out, mate. It's a pretty beautiful thing.
Mm.
Yeah, it does seem really cool to be able to just like print on demand, but I think I would just get super obsessed with it and like print everything and like just run out of money because I'm using so much paper, and I don't know. I get really into things, and if I'm going to do something, I want to go like all in. So
Yep.
I don't know if I'm ready for that. If my family is ready for it either.
Trust yourself, brother. Trust yourself. You know yourself better than anyone else.
Yep. Cool. Let's see our next one. Oh, that's gorgeous. That's, yeah, gnarled beauty. Like, oh, gnarled is the word for that trunk. Look at that.
Personality.
My
Wow.
gosh.
Yeah,
Just feel-
over
That's had a hard
over the
life.
years, I've grown an increasing fondness for subjects that aren't inherently beautiful,
Mm.
that people would think are maybe ugly or disturbing or grotesque, and finding ways to photograph them in a way that portrays their like hidden beauty or still makes them feel special or unique, or meaningful. And so this is one of those images where it's like a tree that I feel like a lot of people would probably avoid shooting because it's kind of all over the place. Like, its structure isn't like super neat or anything, but it's one that I really connected with, and yeah, it just really spoke to me. Is a super unique tree with lots of character, and a lot of times like the most scarred, weathered things have the most interesting stories behind them.
Mm.
It has a very deep characterization for me. Like, I could see character out of various films that I've seen. I almost feel like there's an ant-like quality to this, that it could just pick itself up and keep walking away. Like, especially with that rounded kind of curve at the bottom, you don't know which one's the base, which one's the branch. You know, it almost feels like it's part of a series of appendages. And there's sort of a face coming out of me in the center on the right that looks like something out of the Dark Crystal. And so you spend a lot of time with it because it has such exquisite character. And yet you've given it this beautiful kind of gorgeously paletted soft surrounding to kind of like soften out its grit and its kind of edginess and its, I wouldn't say ugliness, but you know, there's an element of that you were alluding to anyway. So it's sort of, it evens out through the volume of both all the different characteristics that are present in the frame. So it ends up settling. Whereas if it didn't have that kind of comprehensive support all around it, it wouldn't have that same softness or sense of stillness that you're alluding to. It'd feel a bit maybe edgy or a bit dark. Yeah, very clever, Eric.
Thanks, Paul.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful.
Love some backlight. Always love backlight. It's yeah.
I
It
just-
just really glows
yeah.
amongst the leaves, doesn't it? Like it especially those furs. Are those furs?
Yeah, these look like ponderosa pines.
The roses, yeah.
So it's a type of pine tree, yeah.
Yeah,
It
beautiful.
just has a sound to it to me, Eric. It's almost like a whoo. You know, there's this resonance coming out of this one tree in particular. Like, oh, it's my turn to sing. You know, I'm in the spotlight, and here I am, and there's a quiet poise in the trees around, and a slight vibration of graduation of tone between the three of them that gives a cyclic kind of feel running around the frame. That's really quite subtle, but it is actually present, and it's kind of an unusual way to flow around a frame. I find, but it's there, you know, and you circle back around from the contrast of the light dark on the right hand side, and then you sweep back down to the left, and you come forward a little bit with that slight extra sort of warmth and open tone to the left, and then you come back round to the obvious scene. So it has a surprising amount of subtle movement for a very sort of still scene.
Yeah, it's really well put. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, brother. And
Thank you.
I kind of like there's this intentionality to bring you in a little bit closer, in that you clipped it at the top, and on the side to the left. It's not necessarily given this really overt breathing space around. It's actually telling you to come in closer. It's almost like you want the viewer to wrap themselves around a bit and come in and just engage with those textures on a much deeper level that wouldn't really be as enticing if you'd given it that little bit of extra breathing room. It would just kind of pull you out of the frame a little bit more, or just open out. It has
You might want to follow
a,
the tree upwards almost. Yeah.
yeah, it's sort of pulling you back in through that sort of compositional choice, which I mean, I'm assuming that's fairly deliberate on your behalf, Eric.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like the power of intimate photography, composing tighter and zooming in on things, is the most effective way to make somebody look at something is to not give them anything else to look at. And so, this tighter framing that I do in a lot of these scenes is because I'm very intentional with what the subject is, or where I want the viewer's eye to ultimately end up and what I want them to focus on the most, because you always need to have your primary, your main character, and then the rest that you include needs to support that character in a way that makes it even more obvious, or makes it seem more grand, or more interesting or special in comparison to its surroundings. So yeah, that's something that I do a lot. It's kind of it's not, I don't want to call it a trick because that kind of cheapens it, but it's like an easy technique to or an effective technique, because it isn't always easy to make somebody look at something that you've chosen.
And kind of invites you
and then
to.
apart from the lighting, right? Because it's illuminated and everything else is dark, but yeah, it goes hand in hand.
It feels consciously directed and in a good way, I think, through that choice. It's clearly not a mistake. It's clearly a choice. I decided what I want to call this. This is like a boy band, and there's four brothers, and there's a semi-star bass player on the left, the lead singer on the right, and the drummer sort of central left, and one of the quiet bass players in the back. They just feel
bass
like
player always gets snubbed, doesn't he?
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, the presence of all the different characteristics sort of speak to that to me. Yeah, and that spotlight-esque sort of element to that whole dance and performance as well. It's sort of, yeah, really beautiful, brother.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah, so I titled this one. It's kind of obvious, but it's called Candle.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, nice.
Yes.
So this is another new image that's in the book that I haven't released before, but it's also one of the prints available to purchase with the book.
Yeah.
This one's called Family Portrait, and these are oak trees in a canyon. So there are lots of different species of trees. The main ones are cottonwoods, oaks, box elders, and maple trees around here. And then you'll have like tamarisk, which are actually invasive, but they've really become a part of the desert around here. Lots of sagebrush and rabbit brush and things like that, which I also enjoy photographing. But yeah, this is just another fall scene where you have the nice, what attracted me was seeing the warm colors of the leaves that had changed, and then the background, this really nice aqua blue that the sagebrush and rabbit brush are giving it, because in the fall and winter they get like a really vibrant kind of turquoise, or it's a really unique color.
Yeah, it's really that turquoise is the word. Hey, like that really teal sort of bluish green of the grass behind is really unique. And it's a great contrast with the warmth of the leaves that are about to go.
Yeah, compliments.
If you ran a color picker over this image, it would be astonishing the range of hues you've managed to catch in one scene with a level of equality that's really unusual. It's like the luminant qualities of all those colors are so incredibly even, and it's very rare I've seen that in any sort of forested scene in particular. It's quite distinguished in that regard, Eric.
That blue green is almost like the kind of color that you don't only really see in water, like kind of in like the background photo that I've got here. Like it's really like a aquamarine, like just very water associated. Like reminds me of tropical sort of ocean color, and so it's really interesting to see that in a desert in grass. It's just a cool association there.
Yeah, you can spend a lot of time with this. A lot of time.
Oh yeah.
You know, I can't make a book without having some signature Eric
Leaf.
Bennett leaf intimate scenes. I mean, that wasn't like an intentional thing, but that's just something that I really love, and I find I'm
I
always shooting in
assuming
the fall around here, and there's just leaves everywhere. So, you know, there's an abundance of subject matter that you can
uh,
turn into interesting photographs.
Yeah.
David agree with you on that sentiment.
Mm.
I mean,
About what?
about the signature Bennett oil
No, I think
pastel.
it's just kind of something that people have mentioned that they think about now, or like, you know, when they see these images.
Yeah, you're good with that. You're okay with that. Like sometimes people could feel pigeonholed if they kind of get connected with a particular image or something that may not even be something they personally are super close to. But you obviously, yeah, you're on board with that one.
I don't know. I don't take it too seriously, and I frankly don't.
Cool.
It doesn't keep me up at night like what other people think about my work. Honestly,
Yeah,
the
good.
main thing is that I'm satisfied with it. So, you know, if they resonate with these images, that's super cool. I have tons of other stuff that they can look at, but yeah, I don't really care like what people know me for or not. Yeah, except for like genuine, creative, interesting photography.
Just looking at the
So yeah,
image.
this is now the silence section. So these are scenes that I felt were quiet and so. What's interesting is like this kind of happened by happenstance, just naturally. The images in the space section tend to be a bit more grand, a bit larger in scale physically. The images in stillness are a bit tighter, a little smaller, more like mid-range, and then the images in silence are all like mostly really small, intimate close-up scenes. So you kind of like, as you go through the book, you're kind of like seeing the desert at different levels and getting further and further and further into it.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. I was just noticing a little pattern on the left there. It looks like little insect tracks or something like that tracking through the oil. Do you
Yeah,
reckon
like
that would be
moths and little insects will kind of like flutter on the surface, and
yeah,
they'll leave these weird tracks.
yeah, yeah, great little, just so many little bits of detail. Even just the contrast of like the milky water between the sort of flakes on the left hand side here as well, like where yeah, just the contrast of texture, and you got the large unbroken sort of bits of oil, and then it goes through to much more sort of fractal looking bits of it as well. Reminds me of like one of those icebreaker ships going through Antarctic sheet ice. Yeah, but
So this
obviously
speaks
a lot more psychedelic.
metaphorically to me of the surrender of death. It's just there's this quietness of how this leaf has let go and it's fallen and it's found its resting place and it's slowly going to be absorbed into this landscape and recycled around, and that really speaks really beautifully from a narrative perspective in this image, Eric.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the oily biofilm that you see here on the surface of this puddle was created from other leaves that were decayed. So that's like
Exactly,
hinting
yeah.
to the fate of this particular leaf. You know, it's gonna
Mm.
dissolve and become a part of this.
Yeah, and it does it in a beautiful, unashamed, surrendering sort of way, you know, which I think is something we fight with a lot as a society that tries to hold on to life and extend life as much as possible. Nature's not like that, you know. It has a time and a space where it just knows it's time, and it just lets go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I remember this one. Just that deep sort of red umber in the mud is amazing. And like just yeah, seeing the work of yourself and Alex Noriega and Sarah Marino, just yeah, what mud does with different stages of light just seems to be amazing. I've never come across any sort of scenes like this. Reminds me of how like tofu is like flavorless, but it will absorb anything that you cook it with. And I feel like mud, you know, you just chuck it in average light. It's a pretty boring subject, but you give it something to work with, and it just gives you so many different variations of bit of a bizarre.
Yeah, it's
but like
really really
yeah,
versatile.
yeah.
This makes me think
You
of
always
can find
chocolate.
lots of different patterns. The light interacts with it in lots of different ways. It can make it look entirely different.
yeah,
It's like a never-ending exploration with this subject.
yeah.
You know, just like the luster and the three-dimensional feel. It's yeah, like one of those puzzles where you cross your eyes and it goes 3-dimensional or something. But that's it's awesome.
I like how the positioning is slightly off center, and it just kind of adds a bit of movement and a bit of energy, and just a hint of sort of subconscious tension that gets you moving around a little bit more, where it would have been a lot more static if it was just purely centered. So that's pretty clever there, Eric.
Thank you. I mean, a lot of times when I go with like subject placement, I don't think about where it is in terms of like rule of thirds or if it's centered or not. I just go off what feels good for that particular scene.
The balance,
yeah, so I do like balance, but I also like to have a little bit of tension, because if you have zero tension, it doesn't draw the eye anywhere. You need to have something that kind of stands out, and you know, it feels like it belongs, but like its placement, it needs to have some kind of energy to it, like Paul alluded to. And that really comes from like being intentional with the kind of tension you create. So like I like to create balance, but then also have some tension that just keeps the image interesting and doesn't make it feel too sterile or too stagnant.
Yeah, that's quite a consistent quality of most of the images that you presented today, Eric, in particular. Not that I've seen the book, but yeah, there's the grittiness of the textures, the tension of way things have been cut off at the tips, and the directionality and the offset placement of certain things. It's and the slight skews to some of the compositional balance sort of elements. It's subtle, but it's quite consistent through your work, from what I've seen. So interesting that it's very clearly a very conscious choice on your part.
Thanks, man. So this is another brand new one that's available as one of the collector edition prints.
Wow.
This one's titled Spellbound.
Trying to work out what's happening. That must be the sky reflected in some ripples.
Have you seen one of Ben's newer photographs that has an almost like identical color palette with these reflective blues and golds, like very different composition, but it totally reminds me of yours, Ben.
Oh yeah. I think probably different stuff going on in terms of what the color. So for me, the blue was coming through that rock being in shade, and the gold was coming through the reflected golden cliff. I presume the yellow here is the reflected golden cliff as well for Eric, but the blue would be the sky coming through. So slightly different reason for the color palette, but yeah, that same sort of beautiful blue and gold look, and the sort of ridges of that within the oil and water, and great texture throughout.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Ben's right now. It's really nice. The vertical one, right, with like the puddles on the rock.
Yeah.
So like, what's different about that is like the rock is in the shade, so it's getting that cooler look, especially in contrast to the golden light in the water. But what makes this one like so vibrant, and it's the oil that's built up on the top of the puddle. So instead of just water that is semi-translucent, this is like completely opaque, and it just completely reflects it off the surface. You can't see through the oil at all, so it gives it like a really vibrant, saturated, glowy look. And it is reflected light too, so it's like glow on glow.
Feels a little bit to me like this beautiful kind of spiritualist sort of altar, where there's a hand reaching out with this offering of this beautiful kind of leaf, and it's just held there. That's the solid part of the photograph, is the offering, and the solid rock underneath that's holding it. The rest of it just feels like it's fluid and melted and moving. So it has this dance between liquid and solid, fluid and static, that's just centered around what's holding that leaf in place. It's a very unusual combination of qualities in a slightly wider kind of composition. Yeah, plus it has that lateral flow for the diagonals, and you could just spend so much time just enjoying that color complement. It's just delicious.
Yeah, I think every photographer is a sucker for the blue gold color combo. Like whenever I see it, I can't help it. I get super into it. It's like candy.
Yeah. Why would you? It is totally like candy.
Yeah.
Oh wow! Speaking of which,
Well, I love that. That's one of my favorite leaf shots I've seen from you, actually. That's
Thanks, man. Do you remember this one? I released it a few years ago.
It's faded from memory. I probably would have loved it at the time as well. But I don't know. It stands out, I think, from the opalescent kind of oil. And like the half submerged leaf is really interesting. And then that just sort of painterly trailing of gold through in that top left hand corner is an amazing just bit of contrast of texture. Like, yeah, I don't know. That really just struck me. Yeah, and I really dig that. That's really, really cool.
Yeah,
Thanks,
it
man.
speaks about you, Eric. It is a really unusual composition. I would not consider that a contemporary expectation of the subject placement like this is like few that I've seen actually, but it does really speak to your um, clear intentionality around tension. You know, this is a very soft spoken subject, and yet visually it's got an edge to it, and I wouldn't say there's an unnaturalness to the framing, but there's a lot of push and pull going on around the frame with different elements, and both through the softness of some areas and the delineation of others, and the bubbling through as opposed to the soft flow, and it's sort of, yeah, I have to slow down. I can't just move on because it's asking me things that I can't quite understand what it's asking me. It's almost like an unconscious kind of calling that's coming through this image, and it feels as unsettling as it is beautiful somehow, which and I can't quite explain why. Yeah, interesting, Eric.
So that's something that I was trying. I always lose my train of thought. I was trying to get to that point when I was talking about choosing the image for the cover of the book. I wanted something that would be interesting and captivating, but not necessarily like in a loud, like shouting at you way. And it's like what you were just talking about, Paul, is something that I always strive to do in my photography. I want to make images that are interesting and captivate the viewer and make them want to explore them and spend more time with them, because that will deepen their relationship that they have with the subject matter in the photograph more than anything else. But I like to do it in a way that is, by creating mystery or presenting them with questions rather than just giving it all up right away and being a super obvious scene. So I'm really glad you said that, because I always try to convey or create, a sense of mystery in my images that engage the viewer more, because they try to figure it out. It makes them ask questions. It makes them wonder. And I never want my images to be like overly obvious and not really like convey anything else besides just a literal subject matter.
Yeah, it's a very unsettling kind of combination of spatial depths going on here. You can sort of reach in and behind and get a feeling of depth on the left, but there's a lot of confusion about where to settle with that on the right-hand side of the frame, and I think that's part of that visual tension.
Yeah, it's also like a chewed up, like broken leaf. Like, a lot of times when you see other photographers doing like leaf portrait images, it'll be like the most perfect, colorful, like flawless leaf, because that's something that's like inherently beautiful. But I always enjoy things like this. Like I said before, we're talking about trees, like where you can use a subject that's like not inherently beautiful, but elevate it in a way through artistic principles and visual elements that make it interesting and captivating and maybe even beautiful in a different way.
Yeah, well done, sir.
Yeah, nice little split there. That's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This one I actually haven't updated on my website, but in the book it's a square crop too, and these two are actually right next to each other, and they look really nice.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, cool. Kind of like staying with the theme of the split and the leaf, obviously. So that's something I really enjoyed about conversations with nature. Actually, just the very deliberate pairing of images across pages. I was just having a look through it the other day, because it'd been a little while, and I was just struck by the very conscious placement of subjects next to each other on the same visible sort of spread. Because it tells a story. And I think, like with that example right there, it's a perfect example of not the same photo, but telling it like they're very complementary of each other.
I'm glad you appreciate that, because and there's even more of that. It's even more deliberate in this book. So I'm glad to hear that some people notice that. And
it's part of what makes a good book as well. Like not just chucking images in wherever, like it's
right.
I think that design and placement is a key part of a quality product in this case. And yeah, from what I've already seen, you've done a great job, and I'm keen to see how you have done this one as well. Oh yeah.
So yeah, this section of silence also has like slot canyon scenes because they just literally are the quietest places on earth. There's like no running water in them, no other people around, and you're deep in the earth. So like a lot of the sound outside is suppressed. It's not making its way down into the canyon, and I mean it's like deafening. It can sometimes, you know, I think for somebody that's not used to it, somebody from like a noisy city, when they come out here, it can feel a bit scary for them because all they can hear is their thoughts in their head that they maybe haven't been paying attention to for the last 3 months or whatever. And it just makes them aware of how noisy it is inside their head. So it's something you have to get used to.
It's literally like that because I spent a bit of time with these sort of canyons too. It's literally like whatever's in your head gets bounced back around the walls all around you as well.
It becomes like external in a way.
Yeah, it's almost like accentuates what noise is present, both physically and metaphorically. I really appreciate how you kept the floor of the canyon away from this. You know, it's almost like this floating space in the center. You know, there could be a huge drop below or further above, and you've just created this kind of slice through the center of this frame that allows it to kind of float a little bit, I think, in the ether a little bit. It's not necessarily clearly grounded, or there's not necessarily a clear path through. You're just given the slice, almost like a scan, you know, like a CT scan for the earth. And again, you know, you got to get your timing right to get those subtle nuances of hue and tone all the way through that don't sort of blow each other out. But yeah, it's very graphical piece too. You know, there's a lot of really triangular kind of aspects to this that dance you around, and you've always, I don't know, did you do it in a single shot? Do you bother with sort of focus stacking in these kind of scenes, or
if I can get it all in focus at f/22, I'll just do that. But this one is not focus stacked, so that wasn't an issue. I was able to shoot it with like a wider lens, even though it looks like a really tight scene. Because these slot canyons are so narrow, a lot of times I'll use like 16 millimeter or sometimes, you know, 24 at the tightest to shoot scenes like these where you get all these layers, because yeah, it's just like a very compact scene. So in a way, you kind of need to create additional space with a wide angle lens.
And I appreciate how you've been kind of semi-subdued. Like a lot of people go pretty hard out with the saturation sliders and nudging hues around, and you haven't needed to do that here. And I think that feels quite deliberate. It's particularly quite consistent with the way you presented other subject matter as well. So again, that speaks a bit to you. And you know, and yeah, there's that really cool, warm kind of interface going on, and psychologically, it's a bit curious because warm always comes forward and cool goes back, and yet the foreground's cool and the background's warm. So there's this kind of cognitive tension going on there as well. It's a bit. Catch you later, Luki. That's a bit nuanced, I guess, here. Yeah, which I really appreciate. So I'm rambling on.
Yeah, so since my main motivation is to teach people the value of nature, and I hope that they can connect with nature on a deeper level and maybe be inspired to go experience things themselves through my photographs. I always strive to portray things in a natural way. I'm not saying I'm a purist, but I never want things to look different than they would if somebody were to go there, or like lose the essence of my subject matter by like oversaturating things, or just, you know, being completely dishonest or portraying it in a way that has nothing to do with what it actually looks like. So that would kind of undermine my mission with photography. So yeah, I like things to just look how they did, and make them engaging or creative through other ways instead of just like blasting saturation or turning up the volume.
Yeah, there's not so many canyon shots I've seen that do have that feeling of breadth and space like you managed to convey here. It's sort of, I guess it's quite a bit with that extra negative space around the sides that really helps. It gives you a soft entry and exit point sort of laterally that often isn't present with a lot of the canyon shots you see. And they're a little bit over intensified sort of often. And so, yeah, I just noticed that sort of hue in the center back of the frame, how it sort of repeats through the foreground, sort of ties the front of the back of the frame together again really beautifully. But you can almost like peer around the corner in that bottom left as well. It sort of looks like the way the light's falling. There's even more dimensionality going on than you'd assume. I want to go back. We don't have those down here, brother.
We've got some green.
Yeah, it's definitely a treasure,
not
treasure
the
of southern
ones.
Utah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys do have some cool canyons, but they're not the
Not
the same
desert.
color sandstone that we have here, so it's just not quite the same.
Got some good
Right, so-
mossy fern-lined ones, but not quite these same beautiful deep red stone ones. And there's definitely water running through ours for the most part. So yeah, not quite that same sound, like stillness and absolute silence that you'd experience in a place like this. So
Yeah, I did some canyoneering in the Blue Mountains when I was in Australia.
Yeah, it's
Pretty
incredible.
sick.
Yeah, I did a relatively easy access one with Tim Rate a few months ago, but I think it was back in March or April. And oh man, it's amazing. And that, like, you can go to, there's some really hardcore ones that are 10 like 20, 30, 40 meter abseils into just deep black bits, and then just surging water. But some of the most breathtaking canyon landscapes in the world. But yeah, they're not for the faint-hearted. And there's been a few deaths in the past 12 months as well, so they're not to be taken lightly either. But yeah,
I can imagine.
Are we
And a lot
down-
of these canyons here are also technical. Like this one is a technical canyon. It's super remote. We had to hike in quite a ways and then rappel into it a few times, and then there's like a huge rappel at the end of it. So
yeah,
it just makes it like feel even more special because it's like, wow, I'm one of the few people that came this year to check this out, and it's just like this. It's just amazing, like the places that are still hidden from us that nature has created that nobody's found yet.
especially your neck of the woods. I did Pine. You done Pine Canyon in Zion?
I
That's
have
one of
not,
the-
no, but I know that one.
Yeah, that's like a 6 rappel. I did that one. It was sort of like one of the rappels was a sketchy looking old log, and I found out like with about 100-foot rappel underneath, and 6 months later that log was no longer existed. I was just like, I was looking at it going, should we be rappelling off this, man? There's nothing else.
Yeah.
And I did a crazy one in the Grand Canyon area, and it was had 6 waterfalls. So we had to rappel through 6 waterfalls in a row, and I've never seen such a perfectly sculpted, nuanced kind of canyon, because it was just so incredibly consistently sculpted by water. But but as beautiful as it is, it's such a dangerous feeling place because there's no way back up, because there's not a single hold, because it's so butter smooth from the scouring of the water.
Yeah.
So there's a hidden beauty and danger to canyons if you don't really understand what you're dealing with. So
I've been doing canyon research for New Zealand in October. There's one particular one that's blown up over the last sort of 6 to 9 months or so. I think Mark Adamus put out a shot, and Will Patino put out a bunch, and
that'll do the trick.
Yeah. So now that's really blowing up. But there's dozens, like hundreds along in New Zealand, and I've bought books and done research and stuff, and I'm very keen to check out a few. I'm not going to be doing full on rappelling, but there's a bunch that you can just kind of walk into the bottom of and see some really amazing sort of formations and stuff. What is risky about New Zealand? So it's a bit of a tangent. There's a thing called didymo, which is like this slimy, mossy stuff that just is a invasive sort of thing that's in their rivers. And what I worry about is people like not washing their clothes and everything before they head into these canyons, because they haven't done the research, and just bringing this invasive slimy crap into these beautiful canyons. And so I do worry.
Yeah, I remember seeing signs for that like everywhere in New Zealand.
Yeah, so I do just really hope for this particular beautiful one that's blown up that it's not going to be filled with didymo and all the moss trampled off it in the next 6 months. But you just got to hope that people are doing the right thing and doing their research.
And that is the downside of showing places, right? You make them known through your photographs.
Yeah.
And so that's also another motivation I have behind making intimate scenes.
Yeah.
The more intimate it is, the less context you include.
Yeah.
The less people can tell where you took it at all.
The less
you can tell I took all these photographs
Yeah.
in like a similar area, but you're not going to know exactly where I went where to stand in order to make the same photograph or something like that. So
And
I
the same
really,
as
I really
well.
would hate to feel like I'm like drawing people to try and recreate my photographs at a certain place that I love.
Yeah. And what it's also doing, that if it does inspire people, it's not inspiring people to go to that exact spot and shoot that same thing. It's inspiring it to just give that concept of shooting a go. It's not like, okay, like if someone sees it like, oh, I want to give that a crack, it's not I need to go to this exact spot. It's like, well, I can find a similar creek, and you know, if they do want to comp stomp you, or like just even just, you know, try to simulate the idea, it's not reliant on a very specific location. And where it's, yeah, you know, once it becomes recognizable, then it's like, well, now I need to go to that exact spot to try and replicate that if that's people's desire to do so when they see a shot. So yeah, it's yeah, absolutely a consideration, and it's cool to see. Like it's just as inspiring, and it just allows people to find that beauty in wherever they go, rather than feeling like they need to travel halfway across the world and stand in the same tripod holes and yeah, just trample this place to bits because they want the same perspective.
Yeah, very well put. And Ben, I've admired how your photography has evolved. I mentioned it on the Brews and Views episode where we featured you, if you've watched that. But yeah, I've noticed your work has gotten more intimate and personal and creative, and I think that's really inspiring to see. So
cheers.
You guys have been talking about me all night, so it's the least I can do.
Thank you.
Tell us a little about Brews and Views.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm drinking a beer right now, actually. It's we started at 6 o'clock, so it was time for Daddy's medicine.
I was looking at it, and it was because it was really cloudy. I was like, because I was associating, like, just for a moment, I was like, oh, it's morning. I wonder if he's drinking like a cloudy apple juice or something like that. But then I was like, actually, no, it's evening over there. He's having some sort of hazy. Yeah, very good. What are you drinking tonight?
Yeah, I'm drinking a experimental IPA. It's a hazy IPA, New England IPA from Fidens. They're my favorite brewery ever. We talk about them a lot on the show.
Yep, cool.
So the whole show started because for a long time I had been wanting to start a YouTube channel just on my own, featuring images that I like, because I love finding new photographers. I love looking at other people's work. I spend lots of time on other people's websites, just like looking at their photography in the best way possible, without interruptions or ads or shit like that on social media. But it just seemed like a big time investment, so I never got around to it, like to continually put out episodes or something like that. And so I was afraid that it might not be fun and I might not like doing it after a while. But me and Paul Bowman and my friends Jimmy Rodewald and Mike DiMiola, we all live in different parts of the United States, so we have access to different breweries that we all really like, and so we can get stuff for each other. And we created this like beer network, and we're always talking and having like funny conversations, and they're all really great photographers, and we're always like sharing photography and stuff. And I was like, what if we just start a show where we just share beer that we really like and also photographs that we really like? And at the very least, it's a way to reciprocate and give back to the community, and help people find new inspiring photography, and also help photographers get some more exposure. Like, I don't expect the show to get huge or like be able to monetize it or anything like that. We just have a lot of fun doing it. And it's just like nice to look forward to those conversations we have every couple of weeks with each other, where we meet up and crack some beers and share some photographs. So that's really all it is. We don't really have any other intention behind that, except maybe getting hooked up with some free beer from some breweries or something like that. But
yeah.
Do you have any commitment to the longevity of the show so far, or are you just feeling it out? Or
oh yeah, like we really enjoy doing it, so I don't see why we would stop. And we're just doing 2 episodes a month, so every other week, which is pretty easy to keep up with. We're actually like really ahead right now. We're a few episodes ahead with recording. I'm sure you guys know how that works. So it's really effortless. It doesn't feel like work, and it's just really fun and always inspiring. And yeah, I love chatting with my boys. So, and we've also started having guests on. So our first guest episode will be in a couple weeks.
Yeah,
and that was really fun.
Oh, I was wondering about that. Yeah.
I mean, we'll have you guys on at some point. You guys got some good grog out there.
Yeah, we got some good stuff going on.
I've got a good local.
I live 2 minutes from my house is the oldest brewery in Australia.
Yeah.
Casco Brewery. It's literally still standing. It's a gorgeous building too.
But yeah.
So whenever I go to New Zealand, I always drink Garage Project.
Yeah.
They're a New Zealand-based brewery, and their stuff is incredible.
Yeah.
New Zealand has some other good ones too, like Dunkin'. Ben hit me up because he's getting into beer, so I gave him some recommendations.
Yeah.
Deep Creek is pretty good.
Big Creek,
Eight Wired is pretty good. But yeah, Garage Project is my favorite. And they actually ship out to Australia too. I don't think they have a tap room in Sydney or anything yet. But they do ship out there. So you guys can get it if you want. But
yeah, that was the budget's got to be conscious because I've just moved out of home, so I'm can't justify too much on beer. But yeah, no, it's whiskey's expensive enough for me at this point. So but yeah, no, I love a good brew. And there's wine in the Shire. So I live near the Sutherland Shire in Sydney, and there's a really good one there called Sunday Road, and they've got some award-winning stuff. Yeah, so no, every now and then if they put out a good one, my kind of tradition is to buy a really nice one around Christmas time. That'll be kind of my special beer for the year. But yeah.
Well, while you're in New Zealand on this trip you have coming up, make sure you grab some Garage Project. You can find them like at like New World grocery stores. They usually have a pretty good selection.
Yeah.
Or like any bottle shop.
They have a tap room in New Zealand?
Yeah, they do in Wellington and another one in Auckland.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll be in Wellington for a couple of days right at the start, so I'll drop in there with Mikey McGee.
Michael McGee.
Yeah.
Yeah, he took me to a brewery that was really good called Heyday. But yeah, I drove by Garage Project, but I didn't have time to go to that one. I went to the one in Auckland. On the most recent trip that I did out there.
Yeah.
Definitely worth it.
Oh yeah, I'm very keen, and there's nothing quite like it off the tap as well. So got to give that a
crack. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Eric, what's your sort of intentionality on the photographic side of things for the show? What's the motivation? What's sort of outcomes? What's your play?
Yeah, just to hopefully expose viewers to new photographers that they've never heard of, and also I think you can learn a little bit by hearing about like what we like. We don't get too into it. It's pretty laid back and just more about fun. But like we'll say like what kind of principles or things that we recognize in the photos that make us really like them and stuff like that. So I think you can learn a little bit from it as well. Also just bringing on different guests. It's a different format than like anybody else is doing with podcasts and things like that. I mean, it's pretty similar to your show. Like I like how you guys just have like a really laid back approach, and it's just like a conversation rather than like an interview with like a strict format or anything like that.
Yeah.
You guys just kind of let it flow wherever it goes. That's what we try to do as well. So it's like a different interaction with some of your favorite photographers that we'll have on as guests, and you'll be able to see a different side of them. Maybe, see them get a little bit loose after they have 2 or 3 beers. And
yeah, cool. Yeah, I like it, man. I wasn't sure how serious to take it when I first saw the title coming out. I was like, "What's this?"
No, you shouldn't take it seriously at all.
Yeah, but that was what attracted me to it, because I mean, photographers too, some of them just take themselves way too seriously, brother. And I think as you know, we kind of don't, and that's the reason we made a commitment to 6 episodes, and that was it. And you're number 115 because we didn't put the pressure on ourselves, and we didn't have outside sponsors, we didn't sign contracts with people, we haven't set it up in a way anything other than it's just a joyful part to celebrate community. And I particularly enjoy connecting with other parts of the world, which I think is a really healthy thing to do as artists and image makers, that we can create these bridges. And I've been really enjoying the US crew in particular we've been doing that with, and I think we've got a lot to learn from each other, and it can help give each other perspective of how we kind of get caught in our little cultural flows in the areas of the world that we are, and we can get a bit caught up in, it's all about intimate, it's all about this, and when you bounce back on people in other places around the world, you realize, oh, wait a minute, we're going down a bit of a rabbit hole here. Let's pull back a bit and keep the big picture, and recognize that there's lots of other avenues to explore and learn from that other than what we're focusing on right now, and different approaches to the same subjects. And I think that's something that I really enjoyed that conversation earlier, where so much of the work on intimate landscapes is about the concept and the idea and the approach to a subject that is beyond the literal, beyond the obvious, that I feel like we're all going to create a deeper relationship with the landscape because of it. and ultimately that's got more power at influencing people's relationship with country and place, and personalizing it and actualizing it to something they might actually act on. And so I feel like the obvious literal scenes they explain a place and they give context, but they're not necessarily the ones that create a deeper relationship with place, particularly if you're the one behind the camera. And I feel like you US guys in particular, a lot of your crew anyway, are pushing that intimate area pretty hard at the moment, and I feel like it's a very special and important momentum, I think, and it has a real a particularly actionable say in its outcomes, I think, for conservation. So I personally really respect that.
I was going to say, Brews and Views has become a little bit expensive for me because I realized seeing my photo on there, there's a big grey band through the middle, and I realized my MacBook Pro has added too much contrast, so that just looks black to me on my screen. And so now I'm about to go buy a BenQ, so I've got more accurate monitor. I was looking, I was like, no way, what is that from? Like, is it? Yeah. So that was that annoyed me a bit. So now I've got to go buy myself a monitor. But yeah, I've been operating off a laptop for 2 years. I can spare the cash.
It's a good investment, man. And to have that extra real estate to play with is so nice.
Yeah.
Like,
I found a refurbished SW70 270C from BenQ, which is the 2.6K 27-inch, and that'll do.
That's the one that I have.
Yeah, I don't need to spend $200 on a 4K one. That's overkill for me, and unaffordable for me at this point too. But yeah, so that was just a funny little point that I noticed. So to everyone who,
well, your image looked great to us. None of us noticed any kind of a flaw.
What was that? Sorry.
Your image looked great to us. None of us noticed any kind of a flaw.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
so it passed our eyes, at least while we were seeing double.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Well, if we want to cross notes between the shows and connect somehow, Ben and Luke and I have already suggested we're totally open to that. If it naturally comes into conversation or lines up, that could be really fun, I reckon.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I thought it'd be cool to do. Yeah, that was like one of the first things I thought of, like doing crossovers. And you guys were the first ones that came to mind because I know you would get along with us and we'd have a pretty good conversation.
Yeah. It'd be a bit more entertaining with more alcohol involved for sure.
Yeah. We might just have to have like an 11 a.m. beer to line up with your time, but that's all right. Do a one-off.
Yeah, sorry to make you do that.
I never even know what day of the week it is anyway. It doesn't matter in my lifestyle, so it's fine by me.
Oh, very good.
Eric, do you have anything else you want to share? We've gone through the images that you're happy to present, and do we want to think about how you want to sort of finish up and leave people with this body of work and this project, and leave people begging for more, or make it really clear the avenues of and the time frames to approach certain deals that are coming, that kind of thing? Sounds like.
So I think there's one last image. Yep.
Yeah, nice. I think that was out of the little pre-releases that I saw, this was one of my favorites.
This is another one that is available as a print in a collector's edition. This is NetherRealm. Yeah. Another slot canyon scene.
It's a little bit graphical, but my instant instinct with this is to stick my tongue out and just lick up this frame like a freaking lollipop. It just has that enticement. It just asks you to do that. It's like, oh yeah, like just yeah, beautiful, man. Like so it's kind of overtly directive, but then it slows down at the end and lets you decide how much the pace at which you want to head further down the frame. Then you can come back and just slowly meander up and down the sides as well. And I think as much as it's linear in the foreground, which gives it that really instant direction, the amount of kind of curves and sensuality in the rest of the frame sort of slows you back down again. So it's a bit of an unusual combination, I think, in that regard. A really bright lateral feature that sort of just launches you into the frame, but then you can slow down through the curves and nuances further around. It's sort of it's got a very different sense of energetics from the rest of the images that you presented, Eric.
Yeah. I love subdued blues are probably just my favorite color in the world in general. Pretty much every context where I see like a nice, like well-controlled, slightly desaturated blue, I love. And yeah, the tonality.
Yeah, blue is one of those colors that can look like really gaudy very quickly if you're not
Yeah,
careful with it.
you got to be very careful.
It's like very visually pleasing, but if it's overdone at all, it becomes like
yeah, because it's
egregious.
such a heavy color, and so yeah, it needs to be very finely controlled. And that was one of the biggest things for my processing, maybe like 5 years ago, was learning how to rein in my blues and introduce them, but introduce them in a very tasteful manner. It's a hard thing to do, but once you can do it, it can really elevate a lot of shots for just color contrast and all that kind of stuff. And just yeah, the tonality of the blues in those rocks on the left and right is gorgeous. It really, yeah, tickles the pickle of liking good blues there. So no, it's beautiful, and just like the pale tones as well, right in the middle of that reflection, like not that being quite like not super yellow, where like being like a really sort of beigey, tan, high key sort of color, rather than feeling like it needs to be pumped up to a strong sort of yellow, which would be the temptation, I imagine, in this sort of situation. I think that it works really, really well. And kind of, yeah, rather than yellow, orange, blue, it's kind of just pale, high key, and then that sort of deeper orange, and then the subdued blue. Works really well. And the texture as well, like the little bit of the rim lighting of the water edge on the left there, hitting
that's
rock, just that it's such a nice little detail. And just yeah, it conveys that texture really nicely. Bit of extra interest in what is otherwise just a darker sort of area. Yeah, it's those nice little touches that really help make a shot like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty bold entrance. It's kind of, to me, it's like a 747 landing strip. And then you get out of the plane at the end and you start walking around and enjoying the landscape. So it has a very multi-tiered kind of set of energetics in this, which is not very common, I don't reckon. So it's quite a bold decision, this one, I reckon, Eric. Like it checks you, it pulls you around quite a bit in different ways. So it's very directive and bold, and you've had to include quite a bit, I think, to balance that out the rest of the frame. So it's not kind of overtly just throwing it down the back end. So yeah, it's not a color we often get over here so much, Ben, I reckon. And I'm in love with the blues or the hues, like in your cover shot, like we don't sort of get those blues in the landscape in Australia. It's pretty much shades of orange and brown sort of all the way through the whole country, really, apart from the odd Canyon bit. Well, it's been a real pleasure, Eric. We're looking forward to getting you back on. And I said to the boys when the book came out, I might be time to get Eric back on, boys.
Yeah.
Just not that we need a project for you to get back on. It's just a natural timing, partly to support you as well, and to honor what you're doing, and to give a voice and a portal for this new body of work into another part of the world down here, which again, and I really enjoy the fact that you're open to keeping that connection with what you're doing with what we're doing over here. And I really appreciate that you're keeping an eye out for, young super talents like Ben here, coming up in the world, and giving them space and voice, because often we didn't get that in our younger days. There was no one searching me out or giving me a leg up anywhere. So everything I kind of figured out on my own. I was sort of like, geez, that'd be nice if somebody else was sort of pointing a finger or shining a light in my direction. That would have been very, very helpful. Thanks. Yeah. So there's a lot of willingness to give back to the community as much as anything. So,
well, Paul, I'm positive that one of your images will be shared on Brews and Views at some point, and that will solve all your problems in life. You'll be taken care of after that.
It'd be might as well be in the cover of Time magazine. Like it's
buying shares at a brewery afterwards.
Yeah. Everyone. I hope everyone's enjoyed this. Eric's has been a pleasure, and we've been chatting a bit recently, and it's just been really cool to just gain an insight into all this stuff. And knowing the quality of the last book that came out, I have no doubt that this new one will be just fantastic piece of just thing to hold and look at and browse through and take the time just to really inspect the fine care and attention to detail in every single shot, and even just simple things like placement. I understand you've got a very, very, very limited selection of the original one left as well, which for anyone who hasn't seen it is, let me see that there, Conversations with Nature. Absolutely gorgeous book. And I think Eric was saying that it should be pretty consistent in terms of sizing and everything. So they'll look great next to each other on the shelf if you want to be a Bennett collector. And yeah, and also let me know if you would like to grab yourself a copy, because we can do a group order to Australia as well. Help you out with that, and I can sort out the logistics on this end.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Because up until like 8 copies, the shipping is pretty much the same price. If it increases, it's very minimal.
Yeah.
Whereas if you order 2 copies separately, the shipping is it's more than it would cost to order 8 all at once, and then disperse them if you guys can. So
yeah, so I've currently got 2 other people with me, so I've got room for another 5 if anyone wants to reach out and get a group order going. So I can sort that out on this end. But yeah, Eric, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been really cool to look through these images and get some of your insight, and just to hear of how much you're actively working in the preservation of community, because we can talk the talk all we like, but actually putting some of this stuff into action is not that common. So no, it's really cool to see how dedicated you are to these wild spaces and their preservation and conservation, and reminding people of the real, true, inherent value of keeping these places as they are, rather than just a mecca for the masses to get their Instagram snaps and move on, and to soak them in, and to get back to it all, as Dombrovskis said. So was there anything you wanted to leave us with before we finish up there, Eric?
Yeah, I really wanted to thank Eric for bringing that sound space into the conversation around conservation, because to be perfectly honest, that's not something that I spend a lot of time being present with. I think it's partly because of where I live in Tasmania. It really is one of the purest areas of wilderness left on earth, and it's not hard to engage with real life wild noise space for long periods of time. But the other thing I really wanted to acknowledge, and you've proven that again, and in great detail, I think at our first show in particular, the integrity and authenticity to your commitment to the caliber of what you're trying to produce. I don't think until anybody actually tries to do this themselves, they have any idea what that actually means in reality. It can mean taking huge financial losses. It can mean huge amounts of extra time. It can mean going through 3 to 4 people till you're happy with the right printer. Like it's a massive commitment to producing a body of work in a form and in a with a mechanism of the right people. And also taking the time, and it's real testament to you that you've got these people that are willing to write your forward and introduction, and people like David that have you back, that are really behind the caliber of what you do, and I really appreciate the way you honor them as well, and you've taken the time to wait until you have that kind of collective community around the book, as it were, to just accentuate its strengths. So hats off to you, brother. That's no mean feat. And it's not until you try a few books you'll realize what that means, particularly from a high-end production CMYK point of view, with bigger money involved and publishers and that kind of thing. It's there's a lot of risk involved, and you've got to have a lot of self-belief, and particularly you've got to have a lot of backbone to stay with the program until you're happy, because there's a lot of potential compromises on the way that are very, very easy to take. So hats off, brother. And hopefully I'll be getting over your way sometime soon, mate. Maybe next year. And I'm pretty keen.
Let me know if you do.
I certainly will, brother. And likewise down here.
Oh yeah, I'd love to get back there. I've just for my next book project, I might actually get out there, at least New Zealand again, because it's just insane and unlike nowhere else, and I love New Zealand. But yeah, I've been wanting to go back to Australia ever since I went in 2016. Yeah, it's been a while. So, but yeah, thanks a lot for having me, guys. It's great to chat for a couple hours with like-minded photographers as yourself that, I feel like you understand me and you get what I'm trying to do. So that's always nice to feel a connection like that with other people. Something I'll add is these 5 images that are available as collector's editions will only ever be sold as part of these collector's editions. So these prints will never be available for purchase again. And this is only during the pre-order window, just to make it easier on myself to be able to fulfill orders. It won't be an ongoing thing. The pre-order sale will end on October 31st, and so that will be your last chance to order a collector's edition and get one of these prints. If you'd like to have one, or you can also get the edition that has all of them if it's too hard to choose one. So yeah, if you go on my website, you can pre-order the book. Yeah, I have 5 bundles left of my first book with this one, so I'm not sure if it'll still be in stock by the time this goes live, but yeah, hopefully you already have my first book anyways if you're familiar with my photography.
Yeah, amazing.
Right on.
Eric, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think just to wrap up, anything you wanted to announce, Paul, before we finish off the episode? We've still got our Tarkine workshop that we're still advertising at the moment.
Yeah. So we've got a couple of spots left. If you want to come up to what Ben and I feel, well, I know to be actually having traveled a lot, is one of the premier sort of pure wilderness areas left in this part of the world. And I think it's one of the hidden jewels of it's coming a little bit more to light in the last few years, but I've been shooting there for 25 years and I actually realized, Ben, I've been shooting there longer than you've been alive.
Yeah, a couple of years.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you got up into the northwest, Eric, when you were here. I know you got a few other different spots, but yeah, speaking of pure wilderness and getting that elemental experience of, you look west in Tasmania, it's the longest unobstructed ocean view on planet Earth. There's nothing until South America, even past Africa, and we got the cleanest air on Earth, like scientifically proven. There's 60 different semi-endangered species. It's the greatest evidence of the oldest living culture in the world, sort of written through the landscape just about everywhere you walk on the coast. It really is a very unique, very deeply special part of the world, and I'm dedicated a huge part of my adult life to its conservation as well. So it'd be a real privilege and a pleasure to guide you through it.
Yeah, we're both
17th to 21st of November. So
yep, 17th November that kicks off. Yeah, we're both very, very keen for this, and yeah, we've both run the same workshop before with Luke on different occasions over the last sort of 12 months, and it's gone fantastically. We've had some great feedback from those who have participated. So we'd love to have you along. If you're worried about mobility, everything's relatively, maybe 1K return, that kind of style thing. So it's no, it's not not restricted to the highly mobile. If that's a concern for you, so you can really visit some of the most premier locations in the world with relative ease in this area, which is part of what makes it so special.
Yeah, we don't have to risk falling off the cliff that Eric looks like he's just about to, leaning back on his chair with that picture behind him. It's like slippery, dusty cliff. There's none of those.
Yeah. So as a link is on my website, benmaysfineart.com, if you're interested in that, or just shoot us a message if you're interested or if you have any concerns. We'd love to see you there. But yeah, that about wraps us up for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a longer one, but I think absolutely worth it for everything we covered off there. And thank you, Eric, for how open you were with all of that. And we look forward to having you on for the next book project, which will inevitably be just as amazing. So yeah, have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot.